right, good evening. Welcome to our July 23rd Town Council meeting. We just got back from a site visit at 168 Original Road for a agenda item that's coming up later. I just wanted to point out there's a few people on Zoom tonight. We have, I know Angela, you're there, but Michelle's there. And also, though, Bennett Bramson's CMC class, I know some people are joining up for his intro to business class. They're going to be attending the meeting remotely, so welcome to those folks. Speaking of joining remotely, if you're listening and you want to join remotely via Zoom, where you can make public comment, you can go to basalt.net, go to agendas and minutes, and then pull up the July 23rd packet, and in there you'll see instructions for joining via Zoom, where you can interact live. So, I will go ahead and call the meeting to order now, and Pam, let's do a roll call.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Hannah Berman.
Present.
Angèle Dupré-Bouchard.
Present.
Ryan Slack.
Here.
David Knight.
Here.
Dieter Schindler.
Here.
Angela Anderson.
Here.
And Rick Stevens.
Here.
All right, sir. The A-team is present.
Awesome. Okay, next up we have the consent agenda. Item 2A, which are the minutes from July 9th, 2024. Item 2B is the reappointment of Planning and Zoning Commission member reappointment Rob Levitt to P&Z for a 3-year term to expire July 23rd, 2027. And thank you, Rob, for your continued service and being willing to re-up. So appreciate that. And then last, item 2C is our special event activity permit, National Night Out, August 6, 2024. If anybody wants to move any of those items off the consent agenda to discuss, feel free. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve the consent agenda items as presented. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Pam, will you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Let's begin with Angela Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you, Angela. Rick Stevens.
Yes.
Angèle Dupré-Bouchard.
Yes.
Ryan Slack.
Yes.
David Knight.
Yes.
Dieter Schindler.
Yes.
Hannah Berman.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Next up, item 3 is the call to the public. So before I say the kind of the usual things, we have 3 public hearings, I believe, on the agenda tonight. Yeah, 3. And if you are going to be wanting to make comments on any of those, I would just ask that you wait and make comments within that public hearing. All the same rules apply, which are limit your comments to 3 minutes, and you can address your comments directly to me. Identify yourself by name and address when making comments, and make sure you also sign in the back of the room. Comments should be courteous, civil, and constructive, and town council will make no decision nor take action except to direct the town manager. So at this time, does anybody want to make public comments about items not on the agenda tonight? Please.
Hello, my name is Sarah Ryman. I live on Silverado Drive, and I think we live in paradise, so what a wonderful place to live. My 3 comments tonight are, 1, the revisiting or repairing the water fountain on the Rio Grande Trail at the Basalt High School. It's been in disrepair for about a year, and it's the only fill point on the Rio Grande Trail, so currently it looks like a mirage to bikers and walkers and runners. I've reached out to RIFTA and to Pitkin County, and they have placed the responsibility on the town of Basalt. So I'm not sure if that's accurate, but I did just want to put that forward for consideration. The second topic is speed enforcement on Two Rivers Road. We live right off of Two Rivers in Aspen Junction, and we appreciate the enforcement that's being done in the evenings, but wondering if there could be some enforcement in the mornings or during the day, or perhaps a crosswalk for people to change sides of the street for the bus stop. Currently, it's very hazardous for pedestrians to cross. And third, I really appreciate that the Chief of Police, Greg, has been working with me on and our town on the road noise from construction vehicles on 82. This is an issue that's getting worse. I've reached out to Edward County Eagle County, Pitkin County, and raised this issue in May. And I know I'm not the only concerned citizen about that, but perhaps we could consider a multi-jurisdictional working group that may include the state and these various counties and municipalities, as it seems like a very big issue to tackle. Thank you.
Thanks, good comments. I would have guessed that would have been Rafta or Pitkin County as well. Do you?
You mean up there?
The water fountain, yeah.
I think we've maintained it over time, and that particular fountain is non-functional. I think it's constantly kind of in and out of service, so the whole thing needs to be replaced. So as far as the maintenance, that was us. I don't know about the initial infrastructure costs. So we can look at that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Anyone else? Would anyone else like to make public comments? All right, let's move on to mayor and council reports and comments. What do you all have? Anything?
Just one quick one. I took a walk over to Confluence Park the other day, saw the temporary paint on the road and the planters and so on, took a walk down to the beach, hadn't been down there in a while. And I think that project is really an essential link to the schools, and I'm hoping that it isn't too dependent on what happens elsewhere. It's kind of a standalone improvement, so I'm hoping that we can talk about that a little bit more and maybe get it on the radar sooner than later. That's a pretty important piece to the town, as it was purchased, I don't know, a long time ago for $250,000 and was actually the first open space we bought. And it's really become quite the intersection over there with the kids. The daycares especially, even in the summer, so it's a 365-day-a-year deal now, not just the school year. So hopefully we can talk about that budget time and move it forward a little bit. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. Good comment. Anyone else? All right, Ryan, I'll turn it over to you for manager's report.
Just a brief comment. I know it got mentioned in the approval of the consent agenda, but we do have National Night Out that's happening on August 6th, and so that's from 5 to 8 over in the River Park. So just invite all of council and the community to come out and meet your first responders. It's usually a great event. Got some food and treats out there for the kiddos, and there's typically fire trucks and ambulances and all those kind of sort of touch-a-truck elements of those events that are fun. And then secondly, I just want to have you guys keep your ear out tonight. So in the back of the room, we finished the carpet and paint in this room. We removed those divider boards that were up there, and so we have more window access and such. There was some thought that maybe they were put in the past for noise abatement, so if you are hearing any weird feedback or anything, let us know. We may leave them down. So.
Feedback online, so Angela, maybe you can listen too and see if you're hearing anything over Zoom and let us know.
That'd be great.
And I've been.
I'm here.
Thank you. Awesome. So yeah, and National Night Out reminds me, I've been playing phone tag with Nino Santiago. So Weeblos are in. I'll call him and let him know, but Weeblos are in for volunteering, so we can do that. Whoever can show up. Cool. Next item we got. Item 6A, Basalt Regional Library, Library Strategic Plan Update and Results of Community Listening Tour. Amy Shipley.
Should
Come on
I sit
up.
here or
Yeah.
stand? Okay.
You can sit.
Come on up. Hi, everyone. I think I've met most of you at some time or another. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thanks for adding me to your agenda. The library's current strategic plan was completed in 2019, and it's due for an update, and a pandemic happened in the meantime. So we wanted to update that, and it's trending in libraries right now to start from a place of community need rather than starting from a place of this is what libraries do, and so this is what we're gonna do. So I, along with library staff, between late April and early June, interviewed 52 members of our community. A couple of you are here tonight, and thank you for your time. And I just wanted to share our findings from those interviews. This information will go into formulating our themes and strategic initiatives and goals and data that we're going to gather for our next strategic plan, but it's also widely applicable to many agencies in our area, particularly the town of Basalt. And so thanks again for having me here tonight. Could you go to, please, slide number 6? Yeah. So these are demographics in our community. As I'm sure you're aware, demographics are separated by county, and our district overlaps parts of Eagle County and parts of Pitkin County. So it's difficult to get demographics, but our board treasurer, who's a numbers whiz, kind of took percentages of population from each of those counties and kind of made his best guess at the demographics in our community. And then if you go to the next slide, you'll see kind of demographics of, or categories of people we talk to, and you'll see that these add up to more than 52. It's because people fit into more than one category. But I just wanted to demonstrate that we tried to talk to a variety of people across different walks of life in our community, not just focusing on library users or any one particular demographic. And then if you will please skip to slide number 10. Next one. Thank you.
Sorry.
So this is a word cloud. The way we did our interviews was I had an audio recorder, and then we used AI to take a transcript of those audio recordings, and then we had the staff who were present at those interviews listened to the audio and read the transcript to make sure it was accurate. And then we made a word cloud out of the actual transcript. We eliminated words like and and things like that. But it's really interesting to me, none of this is a surprise. The size of the word is representative of the number of times that the word was used in those transcripts. And so, I'm just struck by the word community, obviously, and, in there is housing and work and service. And I'm going to get into the details about our findings right now. Next slide, please. So these are the categories of the needs that we heard most often in our interviews, and we'll return to this list in just a moment, but first, next slide, please. There's an elephant in the room, and you all know what the elephant is. This isn't going to be a surprise to anyone. Next slide, please. Basic needs include housing, transportation, healthcare, wages, sustainable growth in our area, and a desire to not become like Aspen, which just means the wealth disparity and the inability for people who work here to live here. As we build more and more housing, we are not prioritizing affordable housing for people who work here. We're prioritizing free market housing that often sells to people who don't work here and don't live here. So we're just compounding the problem of having more people in the area and people who work here having to drive further and further to get to work, which compounds the transportation issue and the childcare issue. And so what people want is for our local governments to protect the quality of life in our area by focusing on slow, sustainable growth and prioritizing housing for people who work here. I meant to mention this earlier. These are the findings that we heard from the interviews. So this isn't necessarily the views of the library, it's the views of the people that we heard from. People want local governments to protect trailer parks, which provide affordable housing for so many people who work here. With higher cost of living and longer commutes, workers in our area are experiencing less time for balance between work and life. People don't have enough time to rest and take care of their basic needs, so people are more stressed than ever. Inside this larger issue is an underlying issue that people from their mid to late 20s through retirement can't afford to create a life here, so they move away. And with our ever-aging population, the fear is that there aren't people here to provide services for seniors as they age, which will greatly affect availability of healthcare and other services that are directly related to caring for elders in our community. None of the people I talk to are averse to change. They all realize that change is a reality, and they realize that growth in our area is a reality. They just want some semblance of a livable community to be protected from unrestrained growth and increasing wealth disparity. Included in healthcare is a desire for everyone in our community to have access to the mental health resources they need in order to be well. People want wellness for everyone in our community. It's kind of a Maslow's hierarchy of needs issue. In order for our community to be better, we have to help everyone in our community have the resources they need to live a healthier, safer life. Next is community connection, and that's a need for connection, an antidote to loneliness, an antidote to fear, inclusivity, serving a diverse population, serving Latino community members. People mentioned the division in our country, the fear of the unknown around the upcoming election and the fallout from that, the reliance on social media for connection, which ultimately only drives further disconnection, and a deep abiding desire to overcome the disconnection. They have a desire to reconnect, a desire to have difficult conversations in a safe environment to build connection and understanding. Along with this is a desire by both Latino and Anglo community members to increase overlap and connection between the two languages and cultures. Next is lifelong learning opportunities. People want lifelong learning, educational lectures, and author talks. I'll skip that. That's very much library related, and we're definitely going to take the charge on that. Many people want and mentioned a passion for and a desire to continue to be involved and have opportunities to participate in the arts, music, and outdoor activities. Many expressed interest in combining all three, and they want this to be free and accessible to everyone in our community. People want a safe place for kids to be after school, along with the housing, transportation, and childcare issue is the need for safe places for kids to be after school. Many people mention the need for summer activities for kids and teens that are affordable. And many people mentioned a desire to reverse climate change and to protect the environment, especially as it relates to our local tourism economy, but primarily as it relates to quality of life for those who live here. Next slide, please. Some of the secondary themes were civic engagement. I talked to a lot of nonprofit leaders who depend on volunteers, and as a result of the elephant in the room, people don't have time to volunteer. There's no time to get informed about or engaged in local issues, so there's a sense that people are checked out of our local community. People want to have a place to have difficult conversations, or at least listen to people having difficult conversations. People want to be heard, they want to be connected and know that they belong. There are serious issues in our community which carry a heavy stigma, which results in fear of talking to anyone about those issues. And so people want a place where they can feel safe to talk with other people about those issues that maybe they're facing or someone in their family is facing. And then finally, we're in a unique situation where our community really extends from Parachute to Aspen, and we have 3 counties governing that space. And people feel underrepresented by Eagle County, and there's a pervasive sense that the Eagle County government doesn't really understand or appreciate what's going on in our area. The issues we face in our valley are common throughout the whole valley, and there's a sense that the issues would be more effectively and efficiently addressed if we could all work together better to solve them. And so we presented these findings we invited everyone we interviewed to come to the library and hear these findings and give us feedback. We had pretty low attendance at that, but we did hear from people that they thought, we heard them and that we represented well what they said and what they think their community member representative said. So that's all I have. I'll happily answer any questions or.
Thanks, Amy. Any questions?
I always have questions. Amy, you're speaking the same words to us that we've heard. This is my, 4th meeting. I hear it every meeting since I've sat back here again. Northwest COG just published a report in May of 2024 that talked about the change in how people approach quality of life discussions, and especially in communities that are close to resorts. regional nature of the work that the Hearst Initiative's doing down in the I-70 corridor is very familiar to what you guys are doing here at the library. Northwest COG actually talked about the silos that exist in kind of the elected official world with the formal operations and institutional controls that we have placed on us statutorily by just the way it works, right?
Absolutely.
And it's very important to have feedback from the community like this that makes us become more aware of all these issues that you're bringing to the table. It's everywhere. It's in every conversation I have. It's in every platform that exists out there right now, and it's definitely coming to the top of the list for priorities, and I really appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah,
The
thank you.
library is an awesome facility, and we should do more over there.
Thank you, and I really appreciate that, and to the extent that the library can be a space to convene those conversations or to, potentially bridge the gap between some of those silos. We find it in libraries too, Picken County Library, Basalt Library, Garfield County Libraries, we're all doing the same thing. We're in our own silos, so we see it too.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
thank you.
Thanks to you and the board for putting this together. It was very, I went through the process, and it's very thorough, and the findings, well, a lot of the themes that we've heard them before, I think it's pretty insightful. And I think what you guys provide as far as, a place where people and or information can be connected is, there's opportunity there, and the stuff you're already doing with programming that's accessible, right? That,
Yeah.
It's not pay to play, it's stuff that's pretty enriching, but you can go, as long as you can get to the music in time and get a seat or get in there if there's enough, room or whatever. But no, it's awesome what you guys are doing. You guys are a great partner. What are the next steps, though, coming out of this?
Yeah, I was hoping you would ask that. We are kind of done with the data gathering phase. We did this community needs conversations. We've looked at demographic data. We are also comparing our library to other similar libraries across the country to see how we stack up. And we're going to start to look through all that data to sift through it for those strategic initiatives that we want to focus on for the next 3 to 5 years and then developing goals. And we hope to have a publishable strategic plan by the end of the year so that we can then implement it in January 2025.
Cool.
And we'll share that with you when we have it.
We'd love to see that for sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
Appreciate you coming. All right. Next up, we have item 6B, Midland Avenue Streetscape Project Update. Catherine and someone from Wember. Come on up.
Mr. Wember.
Hello, Council and Mayor. So I'm going to introduce tonight in person Joe Farstad. He's met him online during our last monthly update, but Joe will be
Black rectangle and an audible black rectangle. Yeah.
Recall.
but Joe will be joining us on a more regular basis and is already integrated himself very well into the team. So that's exciting. So I'll let you take it away.
Cool. I'll give an update, guys. That might be loud. Maybe slightly different than Dave. I came from a construction and owner's rep background instead of just an owner's rep background. So if I get too far in the weeds, just let me know. So moving east, everything's going quite well for all intents and purposes. Wet utility infrastructure is 100% with the exception of what we're doing for future irrigation on light poles and kind of reworking some of that. Dry utilities, shallow utilities, electrical, and stormwater are still well underway and will continue all the way until phase 2 is complete. I think Stutzman Grabats is making great progress. I think they're appropriately staffed, and I don't have any fear that we won't finish on time. For all intents and purposes, the budget is very healthy. We don't see a lot of exposure for unforeseen stuff. Working through some details on the final lighting plan, catenary lighting and everything else. But I think we have adequate contingency to get us to the finish line. And beautiful project. So that's all I got.
I see a note in there about a dependency on lighting systems, and we got to get something worked out in time in order to order them on time. Can you double click on that?
Yeah, it's almost redundant. It's redundancy in engineering for the catenary system because, you have the electrical, supplier who's partnered with the manufacturer who says this light can support this much, but then you have secondary people that say, well, it can support this much from point A to point B, but we're doing point A to point B to point C. So there's a third-party engineering effort underway to make sure that, the class of shackles, the cable, all the sizing and infrastructure for those is adequate, and that, frankly, Town of Basalt and everybody else is comfortable with it before we employ it. So that's, I still think we have enough time if we make this an efficient effort. If not, Catherine and I have talked about maybe some temporary measures and just plug and play when they show up if there is a lead time issue. So.
Yeah, we just want to make sure we get it right, and I've just started to talk through any contingency measures with temporary lighting, should we have a little bit of lead time on those lights, but we just want to make sure, the final product is something we can all be proud of for the long term.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, do you have like a date though you need to get that? I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but I mean, I see that and I'm like,
We don't have a date certain, but we're actively tracking it to make sure
Okay.
it's a reasonable
Yeah.
approach. Yeah.
anything else like that could be on the radar later?
That's really it
Okay,
in terms
that's
of
good.
any schedule, by specific item exposure. I don't see anything else. Yeah.
Sounds good. What questions do you all have?
Just a quick one on the percent complete. It's tying into the pay applications, I'm assuming. It looks like it is, from the flow of cash out for the work performed kind of approach. And I had the same question on the lighting that David did. The other one, you mentioned moving east. So I've been watching how the pedestrian movement's going to change as that project goes up Midland Avenue.
Yeah.
And there's some interesting challenges for pedestrians getting into this next piece. So
Yeah, there
just
is.
anticipating that a little bit. I'm sure you are.
Yeah, I think we have a good approach with the construction team. We've been able to keep access to all businesses open. We've only needed to close access to each storefront for a single day as promised on the day we pour concrete. Otherwise, we've been able to keep access to all businesses open. There is a little bit of a maze to get here and there, but we've placed some additional signage today and continue to try to stay nimble and place signs, as we see appropriate as we move up and down the streetscape. Yeah, but if you all ever see any shortcomings in the signage or anything, please communicate that, through Ryan to us, and we're happy to make those changes as necessary.
No, it's like dodgeball out there, but it's kind of fun, to play that game.
I know you stand there and you observe, I was out there for an hour and a half today or whatever it was, just watching people negotiate, and Catherine and her team did do some different wayfinding signs today that I think are going to be valuable. Even though to the person involved in the project, you say, well, this is obvious, but then when you're just watching pedestrians, they're not picking up all the cues, right? So I think the new signs are going to be super valuable.
Cool.
And especially with our population that doesn't necessarily live here, that frequents our downtown in the summer, they're not as familiar. So.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Angela, I don't want to neglect you. Do you have any, you don't have to ask a question, but just want to be here if you do.
Thanks, David. I don't have any questions right now.
Okay. All right, I think we're good at this point.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
Good to meet you, Council.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, moving right along. It's council actions next. Next item up is 7A, interview and appointment, Basalt Public Arts Commission, interview and appointment of prospective BPAC member, Hudson McNamee. Did I say your last name right?
You did. It was impressive. Yeah. It's
Not that impressive.
not often.
But I'll take it. Okay, so this is Sarah. So you're-
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just give a brief introduction. You met Hudson McNamee. You'll have an opportunity to interview him in a moment, ask any questions you may want of him. You all are aware, but for the viewing audience at home who might not be as aware of the Basalt Public Arts Commission, better known as BPAC, it was established in 2015 And the role of the BPAC is to act as an advisory board on public arts matters to the town council in various realms. The approving ordinance does allow BPAC to have up to 9 voting members and 1 alternate, with a mix of residents and non-resident members that have significant ties to the town of Basalt. We are currently at 7 voting members at this moment. And this is where Hudson comes in. He has expressed an interest, attended a couple of meetings, expressed an interest in becoming a member. Hudson grew up in the Roaring Fork Valley. He is the owner of Osprey Design Studios, a custom furniture woodworking studio that is directly across the street in downtown Basalt. And he has a background in many things. I pulled out environmental studies and design, analysis, marketing. You know, he has a very diverse background. We feel that that would be a very good asset to BPAC as we continue with the work towards creating the Arts Capital Improvement Plan, as well as looking into the future. Hudson has expressed that he has a desire to beautify public spaces and is really interested in getting involved in the community. So with that, I will turn it over to Hudson, and this is your opportunity to ask any questions you may have of him, and if you're so moved and comfortable doing so, you can make an motion to approve Hudson to the BPAC board for a 3-year term ending July 23rd, 2027. Thank you. Maybe you just want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, sure.
That's all right.
Sure. Again, yes, I'm Hudson. I'm the owner of Osprey Design Studio, and actually just moved out of that space, so now it will be vacant again. I think I've always had a desire to beautify public spaces, and it's kind of, I don't know, I've gone through different routes of like trail building, doing more like policy stuff, to now I'm just, designing furniture. And one of my core ethos of my company is, integrating very sustainable design and processes with everything I do. And obviously that's more like a more macro picture, and I'd like to zoom out and see what I can do for the community and see what input I can have. So.
You seem like a Renaissance person.
I'll take this.
Do it.
I like to dabble. I like to dabble for sure.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for being willing to participate.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Any other questions?
If you vacated this space, where will you be located?
Right across the way, right behind like the Wilts Bend apartments.
Mm-hmm.
There's like the little industrial area back there, and I'll be sharing a space with Jason of Aspen Custom Bands. So I'll have one bay and he has the other, and so so I will be staying in Basalt, which is great. So, but yeah,
That's great.
No, I like your appreciation for the outdoors as it relates to art in our public spaces. I think that sometimes art can overwhelm the natural beauty, and I think you got a good connection to the natural environment and the built environment to make it all work. So thanks.
appreciate it.
Well, I would entertain a motion unless anybody else has questions.
Mayor, I move that the town council appoint Hudson McNamee to the Basalt Public Arts Commission for a 3-year term to end July 23rd, 2027.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Can we do we have to do a roll call?
You can do a voice vote.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, welcome aboard. Thanks for your willingness to help.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we have 7B, council approved legislative position, my glasses on, struggling, of Colorado Association of Ski Towns, CAST. Ryan.
Yes, I will have one of those. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So, as you know, we're a member of the Colorado Association of Ski Towns, and one of the things that these members have in common is that we all have either direct influence or, I guess adjacent influence from resort communities. So we have a lot of similar issues that we're dealing with. One of those is affordable housing. So as part of CAST, there is a housing committee They have been pretty active over the last few years that the legislature has been taking up the topic. And as you recall, 2 years ago in 2022, there was an effort by the governor to do some pretty sweeping legislation that would have taken away a whole lot of local control. The municipalities pushed back, and fortunately that did not take hold. And the reason that we take that posture is that, we believe that our local municipalities know best what is needed in their community, and where the state can step in really is to provide the tools to be able to facilitate affordable housing and also revenue and that type of work. So the Housing Committee assembled, and they have the recommendation that is in your packet. They're looking for all municipalities that are part of CAST to approve this by August 9th. And really, I think the three tools that they've identified in here are going to open up some possibilities. Maybe not all three possibilities for each municipality, but it certainly expands the toolkit. So the first was short-term rental taxes. It supports the legislation to specifically authorize those. Vacancy taxes, which is sort of it's not a new concept, but it's not widely used. And really, I think that's aimed for communities that are probably a much higher percentage of second homeowners and that type of thing, looking to encourage those to be rented to full-time residents versus short-term. And then lastly, the real estate transfer fees. So as you know, we have a number of those in place. They have all been voluntary, but this would actually allow communities to put that type of thing into their code to make it mandatory, and then those could be used specifically for affordable housing. So this is really just kind of setting the stage for the next legislative session, really kind of trying to give the legislature some direction from the communities that come from the mountains that are affected, by the affordable housing issues. And then also, we'll be working pretty closely with Colorado Municipal League and the county counterparts to that. So really just looking for a motion this evening from you, and then we'll be able to pass that along to the CAST members.
I think it's great. We hear about affordable housing as a priority from people and businesses, and the more tools we can put in the toolbox, the better. So, Mayor, I move that the Town Council approve the legislative position of the Colorado Association of Ski Towns.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Cool. Thank you. All right. So next up, we're ahead of schedule. Good. Let's see how long this lasts. Item 7C, public hearing and second reading ordinance number 9, series of 2024. An ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving minor subdivision, condominiumization, and approving changes to the occupancy priorities and unit mix in the affordable housing units in the BCC project at 140 Basalt Center Circle, Basalt, Colorado. Led by James.
Thank you. We do have the applicant group here this evening. We've got Tim Belinsky, Andrew Light, and Jody Edwards. Excuse me. As the mayor indicated, this is a public hearing and second reading of an ordinance on a request for minor subdivision for condominiumization of the approved residential units in the BCC mixed-use project. As was discussed at first reading, there were 65 rental units that were approved as part of the BCC project, which is at 140 Basalt Center Circle in the project that was approved to take the place of the Clark's Market building. The approved project from 2022 includes a grocery on the first floor, and then residential units up above on the second and third floors. It included 65 rental units on the upper floors of a mix of studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. The approvals of the 65 units included 17 that were approved as deed-restricted rent-capped units. There were additional requirements in the approvals that gave occupancy priorities to the category units, to employees that work on site, and then to employees of the RE1 school district and emergency responders, as you can see here in the original ordinance. The proposal, as was discussed at first reading, is that the applicants are proposing to condominiumize and sale the units to employers for them to rent to their employees. The applicants have expressed that they're trying to maintain the intent of the approvals and the occupancy priorities that were in the 2022 ordinance by giving the town the grocery operator on the site, the school district, and the emergency responding organizations a first right of purchase on those 17 units. And we've got a list of those entities on the first page of the staff memo. It was also noted at the last meeting that the project will still maintain the 25% of the residential square footage as being category dwelling units, and an additional 23 units having a primary resident occupancy requirement. At first reading, council approved the ordinance, and the council had direction for staff and the applicant to provide an architectural refresher, provide information on the parking management, and also provide clarification on the occupancy requirements under the condominiumized scenario. And in response, excuse me, the approved architecture from 2022 was in your packet, and we have it on the screen here. The applicants have indicated that they are not altering this. In addition, the applicants have provided a memo that's in your packet related to the parking management, and it indicates that the parking will still be managed in basically the same way that it would under a wholly owned scenario, but the applicants can discuss that more as part of their comments. And then staff has formulated a kind of comparison spreadsheet on the occupancy requirements. Basically, for the deed-restricted category units, in order to occupy a unit, it has to be a primary residence, so they have to be in the unit, live in the unit 9 months or more a year. They must meet the income qualifications for the category of the unit, and that's the same for the 2022 approvals and the 2024 request. They would need to work at least 1,500 hours per year in the Roaring Fork Valley, and that doesn't change for the 2022 to 2024 request. The priority to rent the units under the waterfall described in 2022 doesn't change, except for the employers have the priority option to place their qualified employees in the units. There is still a minimum 6-month lease, and the short-term rentals are not permitted in the category units. And then as far as the primary resident restricted units, which there are 23 of them plus the category units, they would have to occupy the unit as a primary residence, so more than 9 months a year. They would still have the minimum 6-month lease in the primary resident units, and there would not be any short-term rentals permitted. Related to the market rate units, there are still the limitations on having a minimum 6-month lease, and there would not be any short-term rentals permitted. So these kind of show the comparison between the 2022 approvals and the 2024 request related to occupancy of the units. This evening, staff would recommend taking applicant comments, taking public comments, as it is a public hearing. and then providing council discussion. As part of that discussion, we would suggest considering the ordinance that you have in your packet as Exhibit A. And if you're comfortable, you could approve the ordinance on second reading. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and turn it over to the applicants for comments.
Thank you, James. We're happy to meet again tonight with you all. Thank you. 2 weeks ago, we believe we covered a lot of territory, and our task tonight is to hone in on the items that are to be approved by council. As a reminder, the questions to attend to tonight are: the residential and commercial units in Basalt Center would go to condo ownership, and to ensure that the already established priority of the residential occupancy is kept intact. Second item is the town's right to purchase the units is confirmed that that right to purchase the units by the town is on the 17 category deed restricted units. And then the third item, last item, is that the mix of those category units, we're requesting to replace a one-bedroom unit with a studio unit in order to keep the square footage overall of the category units to the 25% that's required. And we covered those things last time, so that's our work tonight. A couple things that we thought were worth mentioning about the condominiumization process, and that is, this request that the units be put into a condo ownership program does not change the project's goals. The request is prompted by, and Angela, you had asked the reason that, it's prompted by the changed financial markets. This project is not immune to those forces. The concept of condo ownership had surfaced in the original approvals. The town's ability to purchase units could not occur without the residences being condominiumized. And the approvals also have reference to homeowner associations for the property management of various parts of the project. Would also point out that this is a very common practice in the state of Colorado, and something that is certainly more and more commonplace in the real estate development arena, and also across the country, where the response is to the financial markets that are encouraging this kind of a pivot. That's all we have for presentation tonight, but we're available for Q&A and also to help with any kind of public comment that might need our input as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Let's go ahead and do the public hearing, and then we'll go into questions and comments from council. So with that, I will open the public hearing. For those that would like to make comments, please come forward or raise your hand online, and Pam will tee you up. Ted, come on up. Make sure you sign in the back, Tim.
Pardon?
When you're done, make sure you.
Yeah. My name is Ted Guy, 167 Swinging Bridge Lane. Been here since 1978, except for a few years over in Willits Lane. The biggest concern I have is parking. The town parking code for projects other than these out here in this special zone district would require, from a residential standpoint, 115 parking spaces. The code that this town adopted when Jackie Whitsitt was leaving only requires 68. That means you're 47 parking spaces shy of what the overall town requirement is. And we're already taking away parking spaces. We're going to have a disaster. The other thing that I did is I went through and looked using APTUS figures, because they've been doing affordable housing in this valley since '76. And they assign a density of residents. In a studio, 1.25. In a one-bedroom, 1.75. In a two-bedroom is 2.25. Using that, there will be 94 people approximately living in those 65 units. And you're only providing parking for 68 cars. You're going to have a catastrophe.
Thanks, Ted. Who else would like to come up and make comments?
Warwick Mowbray. My wife and I have the Aspinall. I just wanted to add a few comments, a couple of things since I last spoke. I am working with the boys on an agreement at least to cover our parking, but I don't know if you're aware, but there's been a change in Colorado law where you can't limit how many people live in a residence. And there used to be a restriction, the sheriff can tell you about it because he's extremely concerned with it. But what, in your calculations, what concerns me over there, and I've said this to Tim when I've been talking, you just have to get a fishing guide, rent one of those apartments, he'll get his two buddies in there, and so you'll have 3 trucks, and then you'll have 3 boats, and then you'll have 3 rafts for one apartment. And because it's hard to get, I've employed fishing guides for over 20 years. They turn up for 3 months and they just do their work. It doesn't matter about how you think you're going to employ it. So I'm concerned about the density issue as well. And I think that in this overall analysis that you guys are doing, you need to have a look at what you've done in terms of just the parking in the street. I mean, last weekend I came in and just dropped my son off to pick some stuff up at Heather's, and I thought I'll go and park, and I drove down the spur. There's no parking all around down there. It says no parking for 3 months. I have no idea why you can't park on the weekend down there. If it's for workers, they're not working on the weekend. The management of the parking is silly anyway, but that's just an observation. But I can see some serious issues, and you need to sit down and do a really good analysis and work with the guys to make it work, because the enforcement's going to really be a problem. And it's no good doing on-the-job training on something like this, because once you've done it and you walk away, people are going to inherit the problem. And there is an analysis you can do, as Ted mentioned it. It's not difficult to figure out, but I just urge you, think seriously about this, because I was perfectly happy with the project when the guys said they were going to control it, manage it. As soon as they said they're selling it off, you're going to have no control. You have 65 different people deciding what they want to do, and it's going to be a problem. And I don't know how you're going to deal with it if you unleash it. But anyway, my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Warwick.
Thanks. Anyone else in the audience here want to make public comments? Anyone online?
Yeah, we have several people with their hand up. We've got Seal Prinster.
Start with Seal.
Seal, if you can unmute, you can talk to the council.
Can you see me? Looks like my...
See a picture, a headshot.
We can see a picture.
No camera.
No camera, sorry.
We can hear you.
It's all right. We can hear you great.
Okay. Well, sorry, I don't want to take up extra time trying to figure that out, but appreciate the opportunity to be here. Seal Prinster and my family has been owners of the 2 cabins on the river, 171 and 173 Basalt Center Circle. For that property has been in my family since 1964, since that property was built by my father, who was the president and chief real estate officer of City Market, and developed not only the cabins, but the subject property and the Aspinall as well. So we have very deep connection and affection for that property and that whole area there. And so I just want to say that, I think there's still some issues to be worked out. I appreciate the comments about the parking, but I just want to support the project in the sense of having the quality development, and especially the grocery store, but also the residential that really makes for the vibrant community and is taking into consideration the acute need for housing in the area of people who are not only residents, so I really like that requirement, but also making it available to those critical infrastructure personnel that just make a community vibrant. We love coming up there and being able to go to the restaurants and the stores and the park and the pool and all the amenities and the people that we've gotten to know over the years. So it's really important that it's a community and not just a place for us to come. We're not that kind of a second home owner. We really feel committed to the area. The other thing I just want to say is that in my current role as a president and CEO of the work that I do, President and CEO of Colorado Enterprise Fund, which is a community development financial institution. I'm involved in finance, not so much with real estate like this, but with community development. And we have a statewide organization that's a nonprofit, mission-driven finance or loan fund. And what we do is talk about all the time the impact of what makes a community. And I heard the librarian speaker talk about how that word was the big word that came out, was community, and that's again what we appreciate about Basalt. So I like I appreciate the content or the concept. Sounds like there's still maybe a few details to be worked out, but I also feel that home ownership as a component of it does build stakeholders, and requiring the residential aspect of it sounds like a really solid idea. I feel like the project is overall very, very well thought out.
It's been 3 minutes. I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's a limit on
No problem.
Appreciate your comments, though. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Who else online would like to make public comments?
Looks like we have Eric Thiel. Eric, if you want to unmute, you can speak to the council.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm here to support my strong support for approval of the ordinance. I am
Hey, Eric, can you give your address, please?
Yes, I live at 525 Basalt Avenue, number 303, Basalt, Colorado, 81621. I'm also an owner of the commercial property immediately across the street on Two Rivers Road at 305 Gold Rivers Court, Suites 200, 210, and 220. My reading of this proposed change of the ordinance is that it's largely a distinction without a difference. The same people are going to be occupying these units, and I fully support the change in the ordinance that Mr. Light and his team have proposed. I know Mr. Light through his involvement in the Snowmass Village Rotary Club, which also covers the town of Basalt. I believe that Mr. Light and his team have the best interests of Basalt in mind and at heart with this project. I think as a Basalt resident, and my position is that this project needs to move forward. This Basalt Center is an eyesore, it's a blight on our community, and the faster that we can get this project moving and improve our downtown core, the better. And as a resident and business and property owner in the town of Basalt, it was my strong concern that strong opinion that the council approve the ordinance as proposed and let this project move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Anyone else online? I don't see any other hands up. I'll do one last call for the room. I'll close the public hearing then. All right, just a reminder, I think we've said it before, but tonight and just like last meeting, that this request is around rental to ownership. It's around the prioritization of for ownership or for purchase, and it's for the unit adjustment request. So I'd ask that we just keep it in those lines because these guys already have an entitlement for the other stuff. So with that, I'll open it up for questions and comments from council.
I'll go. To start it on this side, maybe. I plan on voting in support of this because in my mind, when it comes down to it, I feel like it ticks the boxes for affordable housing. It doesn't diminish that community benefit. I feel that benefit stays intact, and I also feel that, that this redevelopment in the middle of town, like the community also really, really wants that to take place. So understanding the three-part, question that we're here to address, I want to support that because I feel that, the community benefit is still there.
Thanks, Deere. Who wants to go next?
I'm going to hop in again. I just want to remind everyone on this council, this was approved as a rental building. That was very substantial in what we went through. And the rental is very important. It is a different segment of the market than ownership. I understand that if an employer buys the unit, whether the employer buys it or it's rented to the employee, it's still an employee-owned unit. I get that. But in a rental scenario, it's going to rotate more than in an ownership scenario. We don't even have probably a plan for whoever buys these in this scenario, what happens when they want to sell them? Or they probably won't sell them because it's a great opportunity as a business owner to purchase all of these units. So I just think it kind of cuts away at the waterfall effect once ownership is taking place. I understand that it's an opportunity. The town's probably not going to buy any. Then it goes to the retail people. Who knows how many they're going to buy? And then it goes down the line. We're tying those units up to these specific people. It's not very, I don't know. And I could be totally wrong on the rental scenario, but to me in a rental scenario, people are renting for 6 months and they're gonna either stay or leave, and then it rotates and it gives more availability to other people in that group that we selected, which is, we need teachers, we need firefighters. And I just think it's a substantial making it rental is completely different, and we need rental. We need, I know everyone wants ownership, but I approve this on a rental basis, and I think this is a huge change. I understand there's market forces, but it's not my decision on the market. You guys could have got a loan 2 years ago. That's not my deal. And I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry times change, but this was a rental building. I think the stuff on parking, it's going to be a problem regardless. Whether it's ownership, they're going to still have a property manager that takes care of it. So, whether it's condominiumized or rental, it still has all the stuff Dieter wants, which, I just think this is a very substantial change for me. And I'm not going to beat the horse. And I appreciate you guys. I understand. You guys have to do your thing. It's your, it's your building. I just think this makes it for a quick exit, and it's not what I was pitched in all the other meetings I sat through. So I'm fed up with developers doing this. So
I tend to sit kind of in between Dieter and Ryan. I want to see this project completed. I mean, during my campaign for this seat, I said that was my goal, was to see this project completed. That hasn't changed. I want to see it occupied with residents, workers, healthy businesses. I want a grocery store back in town, and I agree with Dieter. The community has said that that's what they want. That's what I want. However, I do see concern with, so I have two questions. Do we have any indication of interest from that waterfall of employers that indicates who and how many units they would, that they have in their budget to buy and would be interested in buying?
Yeah, it's been really positive. We've been careful to not go too deep. Frankly, the grocer operator has said that they'd like to have as many as they can get. So even we're more bold than that in terms of how they characterized it. And then as you work down that list, I expect we'll have all of it committed at that point. To Ryan's question about the second level of ownership, if that employer decides to not own the unit anymore, I think that was what it would just go back to that waterfall.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can I, and I have another question. In the original approvals, the rental of the units would have been rented to employees of those entities in that same waterfall scenario. So either way, in rental or ownership, the tenancy of that unit would depend upon that person's employment with that employer.
True.
Okay.
In Basalt or in the valley?
Well,
For that specified.
for that employer,
Yeah.
right? So if the grocer, it's
here,
my
not-
understanding that they have to work at this location, not one of the other locations. When I look at the 23 resident occupied units, that's where I kind of have the biggest hurdle to overcome, because the 25 free market units, in my opinion, it's going to be the same end customer that's going to either buy it or rent it for 12 months. And then it's going to sit empty for however long it's going to sit empty, no matter what, whether they own it or are renting it. So that, to me, is off the table. The RO units, I agree with Counselor Slack and the comment he made at the last meeting. It's a different person that can afford to rent a unit and buy a unit, because the same issue y'all are facing, the finance markets. Getting a mortgage, qualifying for a mortgage, coming up with the down payment is entirely different than coming up with first, last, and security for a rent. And I have concerns about that, and about, who then can afford these units as RO units.
I think that's a good place to look. The immediate reaction I have is, even this afternoon, we had a different employer than would qualify in that waterfall list ask to buy two of those units that would have their people, their employees in them. So there's such a call for that workforce housing that, that's just an example that happened about 3 hours ago. And they were going to their board to get 2 units approved, and they wanted to make sure they had access to them. But they aren't on that waterfall list. So we'll likely see employers buying other units outside of the 17. Yeah.
And so, I'm sorry, I have a couple
You're
more.
good, you're good.
Tim and Andrew, what happens if we vote no?
If they vote no?
Is the project stalled? Can you not afford to,
Oh, it's-
am I allowed to ask this question?
It's stalled.
Yeah.
Solid
Yeah, it's
question.
stalled.
Yeah,
We miss
Yeah,
a year, something like that.
okay.
It's significant because the financial markets, even though, yes, 2 years ago, but it wasn't 2 years ago that we haven't had the approvals, and it took about a year longer to get the approvals. And anyway, that's utilities. Life happens. There's some other things that happen inside of there that are personal living. So we're racing as fast as we can. The commercial operator to be lined up in this very complex set of a puzzle that has to be just so, as agreed to in the original ordinance, took a heck of a lot of time to secure, and we're very happy with where we've ended up. I think everybody will love the solution, but it wasn't like, put it on the market and it'll sell. It was all kinds of conditions associated with it that took a lot of guidance. The financial markets are simply skittish, and that's not going to change in the near term. So we don't expect that, to get any better. And what we'd like to do is, because we have commitments, we're in for building permit right now. We expect to have that in another 3 weeks from Mitch Miller and the group in town building official. We've got commitments all the way around, including the commercial operator, including these discussions we've had with the waterfall employers. So, we're lining it all up. And there's so many things that come to that gate that if something doesn't happen,
Yeah.
there's a ripple effect that is tough to control as well, Andrew.
Just going back to the waterfall, I don't know that anyone has any control over this, the way it's written and designed and approved, but I, for one, would just like to voice that I would not like to see all 17 of those units go to the grocer, and I would love to see some of those units move their way down the waterfall.
Through the waterfall.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at who's next, as far as RE1
Yeah.
and fire, and, you know, I would love to see,
I think that's a realistic expectation, just because the interest in buying all of them is different than buying all of them. We're listening
yeah.
to your guidance.
Yeah, again, like I
I'd
said, I
rather we
mean,
not disrupt
what's approved is
on
approved,
paper,
and,
but
I just felt like I wanted to express that.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. I think this project, like, something needs to happen, and it's transit-connected density in the core, which helps us down the road from feeling pressure to approve anything outside the urban growth boundary or make decisions there. I appreciate the residency requirement, and I'd love to see a grocery store in town. The one concern that I have is the reduction in affordable housing. The APCHA development policy has the occupancy standard of 1 bedrooms at 1.75 people, and the occupancy standard of studios at 1.25 people. And I spent 2 months knocking on folks' doors and having them tell me they wanted more affordable housing. And here's a decision where we had a number that was already agreed upon and approved, and we are being asked to reduce it a bit. And then that is something that I would be uncomfortable with. I totally get the reasons why, right? Modular housing gives less flexibility in square footage. You're trying to come in as close as possible to that 25% instead of overshooting it on square footage. So I get that rationale. I think it's logical. I just am also hearing the other side of the conversation where everyone is telling all of us we need more affordable housing. And I don't feel comfortable reducing that part, but the rest of it I'm comfortable with.
This is a quick question. What part are we reducing? I want to make sure I understand what that concern is.
Yeah, going from the 1 bedroom to the studio.
Okay, so you're not losing any bedrooms, and you understand the reason is because there's a minimum studio requirement, so we have, rather than give a smaller studio, we're taking the smaller studios. Does that make sense?
Correct, because
Okay.
my understanding is those studios were under what the minimum requirement is for our square footage, so we couldn't have taken those studios.
Can you elaborate on the 1.25, 1.75 calculation?
That is part of the APCHA affordable housing development policy, and they didn't include all their math in there, but they calculated like what's the standard occupancy of a 3-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom studio. Obviously, that's an average. We're not going to have 0.25 of a human in there, but I think that's about as close as we can get as a comparison for who would be in affordable housing in our town.
And if I may, Hannah, again, we own and have rented and launched apartment buildings throughout the valley, and also track them as they're launching, right, like Tree Farm or others that are in the works, Glenwood. The studios are the first to go because secondary to the occupancy numbers that you're quoting, that person doesn't need a roommate necessarily. So in other words, the cheaper it is, the better it is. And that follows with the studio just by sheer size.
Mm-hmm. I would imagine, like, if there were to be 2 folks in a 1-bedroom, that rent, 2 people in a 1-bedroom is probably less for each of those individuals than 1 person in a studio, but I also hear you, if it's 1-to-1, it's definitely cheaper.
Yeah, good comments. Thank you.
Yeah, Hannah, thank you for mentioning the density in downtown and the urban growth boundary. All those things have been goals and objectives for decades, and I've personally watched this thing get kicked down the road over and over and over on the redevelopment of downtown, with some testimony that we weren't prepared for it, or there wasn't a master plan. There was a number of different reasons why this property wasn't redeveloped over the years, and I thought it was a very weak position that the town had along that timeline, that we were looking at other things that weren't a priority, that was expressed so strongly in those days. I'm happy to see that it's coming back to the surface. The one thing that I think we're good with is the 1,500-hour requirement. You know, you can't get 1,500 hours of employment in the Roaring Fork Valley as a fishing guide. You just can't. I don't know how you could. I mean, if you do it year-round, you probably already live here. The same is true of a ski instructor. The max there is maybe 700, and that's working every day. So this is designed, I think, around the right number of hours that are committed to a workforce or a community housing program. The 1.25, I think that was brought up in Ted's discussion when he made the comments about parking. And that's the one area I think has got to be really strong. I really do agree with Ted that that's going to be a very, 24/7 opportunity for somebody. And I read the language in here and I thought it was slightly weak, leaving it up to some committee or whatever to determine how that's enforced. I think it's got to be on the individual building first to enforce their parking.
Correct.
And then it becomes a community issue after that. So I'm assuming that's how that's going to waterfall.
That's
with
the
solid
commitment that
agreements.
the property management will enforce for that area of the parking lot, which includes the lodge.
Including the commercial operator, because they don't want to have
Right.
people not be able to come park. So that's critical to their business. So,
Yeah, that's a point I kind of wanted to make too, as Ted was describing, that there's no way that you put a successful business operator and say you don't have enough parking, you're not going to sell. And the same thing goes for a resident who comes in to live in this place. They need to know they've got their spot. I mean, these things are sacrosanct. They happen when you put this stuff, into motion. You don't underpark. There's plenty of parking over there, guys. There's a big parking field, and the amount of allocated parking spaces to these two buildings that were part of the original site, plus the 55 that we're building inside the building, we're adding something like 30. It was part of the analysis that we did with staff and with traffic reports and traffic engineers and parking studies. There'll be an additional capacity to handle parking over there. And again, you don't bring a commercial operator to buy 10,000 square feet and bring in residents and tell them to figure out their parking. It's got to be figured out, and we do that.
James, how does the APSHA regulations, or do they even govern kind of what we do?
They don't govern what we do. We actually, in our housing guidelines for a one-bedroom, assume one person per bedroom, basically. And then a studio is discounted from there. I think it's 0.9. So they're a little bit different numbers than APSHA uses. We use two people for a two-bedroom, 2.5 for a three-bedroom, I think.
So we're in alignment with our own community housing guidelines, basically, with those calculations?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different.
Since I haven't done my long bit of comments, thanks for the comparison chart from a little bit ago, and thanks for all the follow-up from a couple of weeks ago. So I intend to support this, and I'm going to kind of walk through, what I've seen with this latest, minor subdivision. Like I said earlier, these guys already have entitlements for this project. It's a narrow bit of scope that's changing. And the changes that are occurring are not out of alignment with the town code, nor do I believe the spirit of what was passed previously as far as community benefit and what was promised. So I don't, just at that high level, don't see a reason to deny this minor subdivision. Condominiumization was something that was always contemplated. We talked about those scenarios and how they would play out, right? So this was always not, if not an eventuality, definitely a possibility. And, we're just seeing that. As far as community or commercial serving community zoning alignment, again, we aligned that. We have the, and I don't want to try to butcher how that was, basically some point somebody has to do the path to the river, but these guys are in compliance with that zoning. The unit mix adjustments align, rentals versus condos, I don't believe it's a negative. At worst, it's neutral. And I think it's likely a positive, just because the RO will probably give maybe a handful of people an opportunity to buy something and actually put some, get some equity. Will organizations buy those for their employees? Sure, but that's good too. I mean, so I don't really see a downside to that change. In the property management, HOA's gonna have to hire a property manager, and we're gonna have a sea change here as far as parking enforcement next year. I mean, it's not going to be like it is there most likely, and I'm pretty sure in town as far as the way things are now, which is good. The waterfall hierarchy and that aligns to the original 2022 ordinance. It just clarifies it and expands upon it. It doesn't. Everyone looked, very carefully, and it doesn't change what that says. It just simply elaborates and adds more detail to it, but it doesn't change any of the prioritization. So that's good there. And I just also wanted to point out that even in situations where we do have town ownership, we have people who don't work for the town living in those units. So in other words, if at some point in the future, if we buy it because of our, place in the prioritization, that doesn't mean it's always going to go to, it just means we're going to have, it doesn't mean, let me finish my sentence. It doesn't mean it's always going to go to a town employee. It just means that it will be something affordable that may go to a business owner, a worker, or maybe a town employee, right? So I don't see that as a negative, and that's, like I said a few minutes ago, that aligns with what was in the 2022 ordinance anyway, so that we've already passed. So I know it seems like this opens things up again, like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? It's a change, but I think it's still, like I said in 2022, I think it's gonna be positive. I think the applicant has worked with us and made a lot of changes back then, and has come forward with a set of changes now that align with what we did before. So I just want to see the project completed, and I plan to vote yes on this ordinance.
Angela?
Angela?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to voice that I agree with Angel. I'm concerned about the waterfall, and I don't know if this comment, either comment is misplaced, because, we're so late in the process, and that's not really what we're talking about tonight. But it seems to me that there could be some sort of a cap on how many the market could purchase. I just worry that those are going to get, all gobbled up, and then, our teachers and first responders aren't going to have, the opportunity for housing. And I just wonder, how many of these do we really want to allocate for the market? And so I would say that's my biggest concern. I just wanted to add that. So that's all.
Thanks, Angela.
We have a housing study that we're yet to see, but it's coming down the pipeline that I think that we actually, and we being the staff, know what's in it. I feel like that information could be pertinent to this decision as far as what it told us about ownership and rental units and what is in need. Do we have that information available to us prior to making this decision?
I don't have that information, but I'll just make a quick comment on the two different products. So from a legal standpoint, when we're talking about the units being rental units, non-condominiumized building versus a condominiumized building, it's a change in ownership. It's not a change in use. And so there are other things that are going along with the applicant's request here, but the condominiumization piece of it it's a change in ownership. It's not a change in use. And so that's not really tied into kind of the bulk of what's under review here. And I think the applicant's intent in making these changes to accompany the condominiumization process is to make them fit better under that type of ownership regime. So rather than have the existing occupancy priorities, it's, oh, well, let's create this ability for purchase for the types of people that would otherwise have employees that would be subject to those occupancy priorities or available to utilize those occupancy priorities. So your question was kind of geared at, well, do we need rental or do we need occupancy? So I kind of wanted to answer it in that way. I don't know what the housing study says, but that's kind of ties into where you're going with it.
Yeah, I mean, it ties directly to my previously stated concern about the 23 units, right? Not the 17, the 23 that are RO, that to me are changing from being rented to for residents versus sold to residents. And my concern that it's two different people that can afford to rent or buy, and two different pools of demand for rental or purchase.
I think one thing to keep in mind on that is they can still be rented. So it's not that they have to be sold and then that person has to live, or that entity has to, live in
Right,
there.
but that would require, like, for me, for example, to buy it and then rent it to a resident.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or the school district to buy it and rent it to one of their employees.
But it kind of cuts out the people in that pool at the base that want affordable housing but can't get a mortgage and can't come up with the down payment.
Like if it's going to someone who has another home, they can buy an additional unit. That's a different price point entering into the market than someone who might be a first-time homeowner, is kind of what I'm hearing and what I see from what Angela is saying.
And I think one other thing to just keep in mind, I'm sorry, along those lines is, if somebody were to rent that in a purely rental situation as we have it today, they're going to rent that RO at what the market will bear. If the school district comes in and buys it, there's going to be some kind of subsidy associated with that rental price.
Right, that assumes that they would buy one of the 23 RO units.
That's correct, but I think what we're hearing from these guys is there seems to be interest in these units, and I don't think we're going to get a guarantee on that, but there seems to be interest from employers that are included in that waterfall to purchase these. So we can't be held to that, but I think it's worth noting. And then to your previous, I think the housing study more or less reveals that we need housing in all categories. I don't know, James, did they address rental versus ownership?
I mean, they indicated we need both. Michelle has her hand up too. Do you have additional comments?
Thanks, I do. Good evening, everyone. Couple just quick thoughts for you is that when staff is reviewing applications like this is an application for minor subdivision. And so we have to look at what the code says for minor subdivision. Chapter 17 for subdivisions, they're really to regulate development to meet the minimum standards of utility installation, access, lot sizes, correction of survey or plat errors, relocation of easements, or such technical matters. And one of the criteria in there is that for a minor subdivision, which is the main part of this request, that it doesn't create any new residential units. So we all agree, I think, on that aspect, that that's not doing that. That in itself is the reason that staff needs to recommend approval for this application. There's no criteria that says that we can nitpick the category units, since those were already delegated and considered during the original entitlement process. So it's really tricky, and I feel all of the challenge of going back and forth on the items, but just kind of getting to brass tacks here for the minor subdivision request per the code, it checks the boxes. I'm not discounting any of the other discussion about this, and James is absolutely correct. The housing survey guidelines or update that we just did says we need housing of all varieties, all sizes, and it actually leans a little bit heavier towards purchase units, but there's a lot of caveats to all of that, so I don't know that it's not as clear as we need this or that. It's a little bit of everything. So I just wanted to share with you and remind you of the kind of the basis of the code for helping make your decision tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. And there's a lot of things we could have done, but what we did do was specify this number of RO units, and now that these are going to have to be distinct units because of the ownership. And if we had made them category in the past, then that would be a different conversation, but we didn't. Like, so they, to Michelle's point, and said a different way, kind of non-planner, non-lawyer, layman's terms, like, they have to still just be RO. They can't be something different. There can't be income restrictions, or like, we would like this to go for somebody, like, I feel the way you guys do about that we need more housing for people like that, but I don't believe that is appropriate to do that for these units for the reasons basically Michelle and others
Yeah,
have said.
just to clarify, that was not my intention. My intention was purely rental versus ownership, because that is the question before us. Not changing category from resident owned to category 1 through 3. It was
Jeff's
just,
point, the use isn't, right, to get the use isn't
no, the
changing.
use isn't
Yeah.
changing.
And so, I mean, largely, again, the condominiumization aspect of this is a change in the form of ownership. It's not really a change in the land use. There's little discretion on that point. The areas where the council would be more appropriately weigh in are the changes in conditions that are coming along with that product. And here, those relate to the waterfall, which is a change from occupancy restriction in the original ordinance and to replaced with a right of first purchase through a waterfall program. So that's a new condition that, I think council, if there's further comment and discussion on that, would be an area to focus. I mean, that's largely the main change. There's the one minor change they're requesting as part of this, from a 1-bedroom down to a studio unit. So it's a little bit of a change in the unit mix. But otherwise, again, from a land use perspective and the restrictions that are on the property today versus what the restrictions would be on the property after any approval are similar, other than those minor few things.
I wanted to jump in real quick to, I guess, hear other folks' thought, particularly on that third item about the affordable housing unit change or reduction. I think what I'm weighing is, like, you have a little bit cheaper rent. We're helping out the developers. Like, we want to get shovels in the ground. And on the other side, like, it's already affordable. A teacher is going to be calculated to be able to afford the 1-bedroom, so the cheaper rent argument to me isn't as compelling as, like, the possibility of having more folks in there. But I'd be curious to hear what you all are thinking. And another question, like, would we be able to get them the approvals they need, like get shovels in the ground and things moving along, but keep the original allotment of affordable housing units as they were?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure
one
if I follow on the
question. Like,
question.
are we able to, like, approve this project, let them get rolling? They've got a lot of demand for those affordable housing units, like, get them rolling.
Yeah.
But keep the affordable housing as originally stated?
In terms of the restriction,
Mhm.
as originally stated, I mean, Jody, if you want to talk.
Well, if I understand you correctly, I think the question is, assuming that they vote to deny the change from 1-bedroom to studio, but approve everything else, can we get a shovel in the ground? Am I paraphrasing correctly?
Yeah, thank you, yeah.
Just one unit.
I mean, the excess amount of square footage, Hannah, that's not trivial to us. I mean, we're fighting tooth and nail for this thing to work, so, that extra square footage is a cost that we were trying to not put in the bucket, and we are already meeting the 25% requirement by way of even this exchange or this replacement of one bedroom to studio. So we felt like we were still hitting that 25% requirement.
And
So
the
is that,
units, to be clear, the units are larger. I mean, I think the overall of what we're providing now is more than what we thought before. Does that make sense?
So unit, let me just ask a quick clarifying question. Unit change is the same, or unit counts are the same. What is the square footage percentage like former, in the old versus what square footage percentage or would we have with the one bedroom or a studio?
What you're trying to do is just a representative cross-section of units of 25%, so that for example, we have 4 little units that are under the minimum unit size for a studio for the affordable housing guidelines. We're going to keep all those, and in exchange for giving a larger unit that's category, we were trying to get back the square footage from a one-bedroom to a studio. I think that's all that's going on there.
So I have a clarifying question. So if this was the Basalt code, are we talking about we're swapping one body for 0.9 bodies? That's the conversation.
Wait, 10, 0.1.
Yeah, so that doesn't, I mean, I don't feel uncomfortable with that.
I don't either, but, what is, if you switched it, what would that, I'm curious with the square footage change, where it would end up, like how much more, are we
We're
talking like a point?
0.5% to 1.5% max.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
maybe 100
I think
square
it's
feet.
like
Yeah, that's
120
It's a
square
very-
feet, yeah.
I mean, it's pretty minimal.
I mean, it was our proposal to true it all up and get this puzzle to fit as best it could.
Yeah.
Is that one gonna make or break the project? Hannah, no, it's not, but we would appreciate the help on that because 100 square feet is a real number.
I live in an affordable one bedroom and I'm like, wow, I've accumulated quite a lot of skis and bikes to fit in here. So to me, that 100 square feet, or to whoever that resident might be, like, I think, yes, it's noticeable to you guys. It's also noticeable to that resident. Both sides have really valid arguments here.
Is that a conditional type of thing, Jeff? Is that a condition or is that kind of outside
That's
the
a
law?
condition. So, I mean, again, the changes are really that's one, from a one bedroom in the unit mix approval to a studio. And then again, the other is the occupancy restrictions, replacing that with rights of first purchase through the waterfall.
Jeff, excuse me. Is it possible for this council under this amendment to accept one of the smaller studio units?
We wouldn't meet the livability requirements. I mean, so that would be tough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of starting to split some hairs here that probably don't matter in the bigger picture at this point. I mean, like I said, this has been through the grinder for a while. And I think we need to, as a community, look in the mirror and say, how are we going to accomplish our goals if we continue to, splinter these projects into pieces and parts that don't fit together? It's really a time-consuming effort. And I think, the formal institutions that we work in, the codes, all these things are open for, discussion at some point. We've already heard about this movement with CAST for vacancy rates. If this turns into an issue down the road, the town can enact an ordinance that says if you leave a unit vacant and it's supposed to be resident occupied, here's your bill. And that can go into our affordable housing bank account. And some of those opportunities that are being presented to us for future discussions can't be held up because of discussions we've been having for 2 decades. And I think we've drawn a line in the sand. I'm ready to see the place cleaned up and organized and presentable, and to all of Hannah's points, accomplish our long-term goal of density and vitality in downtown, period. I would make a motion to approve this.
Can I say one more thing before you
Sorry.
make the motion? I just want to reiterate to council, I think the problem on this becomes, and we made the waterfall in an effort to say, hey, if you work here, you live here. And I think that's a great idea. But we're now seeing in retrospect that that's also going to limit some of the other more important people that I would say, like our teachers, like the firefighters, like the police officers. And it's something just going through this, what we're doing now, in the future, we need to really emphasize that those are the true people that we care about for the affordable housing. Granted, you want employees to live close to work. That's going to take a car off the street, ideally. I still think we're getting into some crazy weeds on who's working where, how many hours are they going to work, how do we prove it all, no one's checking these pay stubs. But I get it, that ship has sailed. But I just want to reiterate, for going forward, we need to really consider this, because that's one of the things that I don't like about it now. Is that we are subsidizing a private business, right? This private business is going to get a great deal on however many units they buy. They're private businesses. They jumped in, bought this from these guys. Good on them. But that's also giving them access to all of this affordable housing, which allows them to make more money. And I want that to just be on the statement that we shouldn't be in the business of providing private, for-profit businesses subsidized housing. It gets different when you get into the government employees. That's where I think we need to make our effort. So just know that I do not support financing private businesses and helping them make more money. And I think this does that. It's not your fault. It's the language we approved. But
Is it possible to amend anything and add a cap to the number of units that the grocer can get out of those 17?
The waterfall is up for discussion.
Yes.
The waterfall is up for discussion. The original ordinance had an occupancy restriction that limited the occupancy of those category restricted units to workers on site, to school district employees, and to employees of first responders. It didn't say 1, 2, 3. It created a category.
Fair,
Correct.
if you will.
And and it didn't say that workers on site got access to all of those units before it might be for a school district employee. Now, there's a waterfall that's being proposed here, and Tim and Andrew might say that maybe the intent was different, but that's the way the ordinance reads. But because we're at this stage where that restriction's being repealed and a new one being imposed, there's opportunity for council to provide comment and perhaps amendment on that waterfall regime. But I certainly want to get applicants to weigh in on that as well.
Please. Conceptually, I don't have an issue. What I have an issue with is representations that we've made based on even when it was rental, but like a grocery operator has been told that they will have first opportunity at the 17. Puts us in a tough spot. Potentially a legal spot, potentially a breach of contract spot, because we are under contract on that operation. So that's my concern, Angela. It's not, I conceptually am with you, and the reality is I truly don't believe that the operator has the capacity to buy all these units anyway. But to get it into now a backpedaling, and I mean,
I appreciate
it puts us
that
in a pretty tough spot,
position,
and that's
but
what I'm worried about. I haven't really processed it.
Before you had our approval, was that not kind of legally yourself putting the cart before the horse?
We struck the deal with this operator long before we were all here. I mean, we were working on this 6 months ago, that kind of timing, if you will. Not on purchase, but on the rights to access all 17 of those deed restricted category units.
But if I'm understanding Jeff correctly, he said that previously, under the original approvals, it was more of a fair playing field and not this very strict waterfall.
There's one pool, and all of those people within the pool. The applicants, as the owner, could pick anyone from within the pool, right? But there's just, instead of We got to pick from pool, this pool 1, then 2, pool 3. They're all within pool. So
Okay.
there would be currently
They could have promised
the
all
ability,
17.
they could have leased all 17 units to
Okay.
an employer on site.
Then I rescind that comment.
My,
I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
my comments about the waterfall still hold true too. I think that if somebody wants to come in here and buy as many as they can, that that's the wrong vision for the property. And, you know, the motion could be to approve with some other discipline around the selection process, and somebody doesn't get to buy all 17. That's not what we're trying to create in the community, in my opinion. I'd like to see something that floats a little bit more, you know, out there so everybody gets a shot. And I don't know how you do that. Maybe it's just supply and demand in terms of, but if someone that has a corporation that's an entity in this valley that has 100 employees involved and can come down here and buy 17 units, that is not gonna pass muster. I mean, and maybe it's too late.
Yeah,
But
and I think-
that's more of a, maybe it's philosophical, maybe it's,
And I think the applicant's point is that these units could have been rented, all 17 of them, to this employer. And so that was the rationale behind the waterfall, to give that first priority.
Thank you, Jeff. That is what we understood.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're all the same pool, but you guys get to pick from that pool. And so the opportunity and the ability
I
to
guess
rent
so,
to
yeah.
those.
In the way that would be implemented, yes, but still the same outcome.
Yeah.
So that, in that section, the H occupancy priority from 2022, it doesn't really say like development, project employees, or it just lists them first, then employees of the RE1 school district, then emergency responders. Is that ordering?
That's how
If I indicate like the priority order, or is just the order are listed? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that is the order that they're listed.
Yeah.
Well, it's,
But it is, and there would, and I'll just repeat that there would have been the ability there is the ability for the applicants to lease all of the units to the.
Because they were yeah.
They could have leased to whoever they wanted
I
to.
think Jeff and I agree that it's sort of a level field with those three, and it isn't to these guys first, and then these guys second, and then these guys third.
Yeah, because then it would have been your choice out of that pool, essentially.
Right.
Okay. All right, so, any other discussion on that waterfall that we need to do at this point? Do we need to revisit the unit mix? Or does someone want to make a motion?
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt ordinance number 9, series of 2024 on second reading.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Pam, please call the roll.
Alrighty, let's begin with Ryan Slack.
No.
David Knight,
Yes.
Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
Hannah Berman,
Yes.
Angela Anderson,
Yes.
Rick Stevens,
yes.
Angèle Dupré-Bouchard,
Yes.
and Ryan Slack. Oh, I've got Ryan,
I'll
I'm
vote
sorry.
no again, but it doesn't matter.
Take two of
And I
those.
appreciate you guys listening. And
No.
No, it's a
You've
good
been
discussion.
nothing but nice to me, and I've been my passionate self, so.
I think you
do
brought up great
appreciate it.
points, Ryan. I think
I
we're
don't
trying to wrestle with them.
I know.
I mean,
You guys-
there's not always,
You guys stood here and fought, and I appreciate that.
For what it's worth, we live right across the street, so we're here.
Thank you all.
Hey, thanks, guys. Good discussion, everybody.
Feedback.
All right, our next one. Next up, we have item 7D, public hearing and first reading ordinance number 10, series of 2024, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving minor subdivision for the condominiumization to condominiumize the 12 dwelling units approved on Lot J of the Basalt Commercial Park Subdivision PUD, 133 Emma Road, Basalt, Colorado.
And Angela?
Michelle.
Mayor, Angela's got her hand up.
Yeah. Angela?
How would you like me to go about recusing myself? Should I just mute myself and not vote? Should I sign off the Zoom?
Yeah, if you could just go ahead and leave the Zoom conference, and then we will send you a text when it's time to rejoin.
Thank you. I do too much.
All right, thanks.
And so you're recusing yourself just for the record, correct?
I'll say for the record, Angela's recusing herself because she has a conflict of interest under the Code of Ethics.
All right. So Michelle.
All right, good evening. I'm just going to hop right into this one. This is a public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 10, series of 2024, approving a minor subdivision for condominiumization to condominiumize the 12 units approved on Lot J of the Basalt Commercial Park Subdivision PUD at 133 Emma Road. Forkfront Basalt LLC received approvals for development of a 12-unit residential building, 9 free market, and 3 affordable housing units at the location in 2021. The applicant is requesting minor subdivision approval to have the ability to sell some or any of the units for financial flexibility to develop the building. Since the land use approvals in 2021, the cost of construction and financing has increased significantly, and we've been working with the applicant to find ways to help the project move forward. The application is for minor subdivision. There are no other changes proposed. This application meets the intent of the minor subdivision section of Chapter 17 in that it is a technical adjustment and does not change the use of the building or the number of units that were previously approved. For this reason, staff recommends approval of the application. This is a public hearing, so staff recommends you hear a brief presentation or comments from the applicant, Aaron Ward, and then take public comment, and if you're comfortable, make a motion on ordinance number 10. With that, I'm going to pass it over. We certainly can go through some slides if you're interested, but I don't think that's really the point of the application, unless you want to see them, council.
Okay.
With that, I'll hand it over to Aaron.
Aaron, welcome.
Council, town staff, thank you. Thanks for hearing me on this. I am the owner of Forkfront Basalt, the developer. A little history on this. We got approved about 2 years ago, February 2022, and we put the project on hold because of market conditions, primarily interest rates going up. We started talks at the request of the town to see how we could potentially get more affordable housing into the project. I believe those talks began in June, and James and I and Michelle and I have talked a lot since then. Recently, the idea of condominiumizing for the potential to RO restrict the 1-bedroom units at the end of the project was talked about and presented to Bach as well. What this really does for me is that it allows for me to get a cash infusion for a potential employer or just a potential purchaser, and it also allows me to retain many of the units for rental. So it essentially allows for me to reduce my carry, reduce my risk, and still offer a for-rent product if that's the path, which that's what I would like to do. 3 of the units, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, are category units, and then 6 would be free market. And then the idea that we've discussed is the 3 bedrooms, 3 1-bedroom, at the end of the project, becoming RO restricted, making the entirety of the project 50% on a unit basis, deed restricted.
Thanks, Aaron. Let's go ahead and do a public hearing, and then we will go to council questions and comments. So I'll open it up, open the public hearing. Anybody in the room, if you'd like to make comments, please come forward. And anybody online, if you'd like to make comments, please raise your hand and we'll elevate you so you can make comments. So hearing none, I will close the public hearing and open it up for council questions and comments. Again, this is an Arrow 1 condominiumization. There's the condition with the green ride surcharge being transferred to the condominium association from the applicant. And that's what this one is about. So we'll open it up.
Like I have deja vu, right?
Groundhog Day, right?
I mean, like, it's like, I feel like we got all of our frustrations out on Tim and Andrew. And Aaron gets kind of lobbed an easy pass here.
I will, if you allow me, I'll draw some distinctions. I believe I'm bringing community good to this by offering up currently market units to be restricted and increasing the amount of affordability within the project by a lot, by 100%, 3 to 6 units. That's the distinction between the last discussion. Also, while this was approved as a for-rent project, it was never presented as a condominium project just because the viability was there for a rental product, and I wanted to go that path for a build and hold scenario. So the condominiumization actually conforms more to the adjacent use, which is Harry Teague's mixed-use condo building, which has always kind of been a reference point in our design and everything else with our approvals in the first place. So there are some, in my opinion, some distinctions there.
And I'll just add, the one other distinction is that Aaron's project doesn't have the waterfall. So that makes this discussion a lot more simple. There's no change to any waterfall, or not a change because there's just no waterfall in priority. So it's a little more cut and dry that direction.
Yeah, the priorities for occupancy and Aaron's just go by the town's community housing guidelines, which are first responders, then normal employees in the town of Basalt, and then essential employees from Aspen to Glenwood, and then regular employees from Aspen to Glenwood. That's the housing guideline priorities.
Pretty straightforward.
I mean, once again I don't like people presenting a rental and then switching into condos. I understand his issues. I do like that he's bringing more RO to the table. I think that's commendable that he's trying to sweeten the pot. But I wish guys would just come to the table and do it. I get stuff changes and it's out of my control. I'm just tired of it.
So just for the record, are there any ROs being added in here? I think that was maybe something the applicant was contemplating in the future, but I don't think that's actually in this minor subdivision. Is that correct, Michelle?
That's correct. I didn't make it a condition of approval.
So then is it just he's thinking about it? Like, if we approved it, he's not tied to anything, right?
Ryan, just to interrupt, and Michelle, not to step on toes here, but I was expecting it to be presented tonight as I'm offering up the RO units because that's the way I presented to Bach, and so I thought that was the condition.
Yeah. I may be out of sorts, James, if I missed that in the ordinance. Because remote working is a little silly.
No, it's not currently in the ordinance.
I'm just
So
looking.
currently there's 3 units,
Three category units, yes.
and they're suggesting 3 more.
Well, no, 3 resident occupied.
Three RO, but 3 More.
More, yeah.
So
So
six-
half the building.
Yeah, 6 of 12, which is his 50%.
Correct.
But that's not in the draft ordinance.
Just to clarify, with
Put it in
the
there.
3 additional units, are they proposed to be RO or are they proposed to be category?
RO.
All right.
RO, okay. So, I mean, if the applicant is proposing that and it's the council would like to see as well, there'd be the ability to approve this with that condition, with an amendment to include that in addition, 3 units would be subject to an RO deed restriction.
3 additional.
Right.
That's pretty, yeah. I'd
Yeah.
be comfortable doing that tonight,
Definitely.
condition.
10-4.
And just to clarify, that is, because there's different types of RO, that is the no price cap and no appreciation cap RO, so similar to the ones in the, the Riverside development. So there's a clarification there because there is those caps in some, in others not.
But there's still a 9-month requirement?
Yeah.
Well, I think what we could do is come back at second reading with
Yeah.
that more specific language, make sure it syncs up with applicants' expectations as well, if that's what council would like to do.
Yeah, I would feel more comfortable with that, like having it in front of us and
Sure.
Aaron having saying, yes, this is my intention.
Yeah.
So we'll do we can do a condition for 3 ROs to add, and then with clarification on what all that condition entails at
Yeah.
second reading.
Yeah, we could have that in the draft ordinance for second reading.
Okay.
And did we make sure that the 9-month occupancy requirement jives with the 6-month rental requirement, which is really for the BCC parcel?
Yeah, that's only for the BCC. So theirs is,
I know this
Six-
one's
6
different,
months,
but it
yeah.
made me think of,
theirs was 6 months specifically for ordinance, and it's, is it 9 months in the affordable housing guidelines?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
basically it says there's like a 9-month occupancy requirement and 6 months of rental, and I just wanted to make sure that it
Not to be
jives
exact,
like,
the 6-month rental
But that's
applied
a
to
different-
all
yeah.
the units, and the 9-month applied to both the category and the primary residence units.
yeah. Sorry, different one though.
Yeah, that's correct. Jeff's response.
It's different.
So I don't have any questions or comments other than, it's great, I think, doing the RO. I'm looking forward to getting those details in front of us at next second reading. So if someone wants to make any comments or questions, otherwise I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve ordinance number 10, series of 2024 on first reading and continue, and set the public hearing and second reading for August 13th, 2024.
Second,
I'm sorry, just to clarify, that's with the
Oh, am I
amendment.
reading the wrong one?
Is that with
Add
the
the condition.
amendment for the,
Oh, and adding the condition that we're going to come back with clarification on the 3 additional RO units that meet the developer's intent and council's requests.
perfect.
Thank you.
Good with that second?
second,
It's been moved and seconded. Pam, will you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Let's begin with Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
Hannah Berman,
yes.
Angela's not here. Rick Stevens,
Yes.
Angèle Dupré-Bouchard,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
No.
David Knight.
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Aaron.
How's that?
Thanks, Aaron.
It's good we're disposing of
You got text.
Thank you.
Text.
I just did.
Thanks. Let's give her a moment. Yeah.
Close.
I don't know how.
Making a comeback.
Miracle. Don't speak too soon. We've been at it since 5, so people have to step out for a moment, and we're waiting for somebody to come back onto the Zoom bridge, and we'll go ahead and get started in a moment. Ryan, do you have a sink? That's right.
Oh, yeah, in the closet. I didn't have my phone with me. Site visit.
Oh.
I accidentally left it at home. I had to go retrieve it, so I missed your text.
Oh, sorry. Signing into Apple TV. 10 times.
It wasn't behaving. I assume not for you.
Well, you're just like, do you know your passwords? No. I can only do so much. You pay me extra. Do all your passwords too.
Yeah, I'll just so also.
Yeah.
All right. Angela, are you on Aaron Ward's connection there?
I'm going to promote her, James. Yeah.
I texted her, it did come back to say that it was, her notifications
Okay,
were
good.
silenced, so she may.
I just saw Aaron drop off.
Yeah. I was just trying to promote Angela here up to.
Standing thing.
Been standing days.
Panelist, I don't know if she'll go, but. There she is. Oh.
We see you.
Is it possible to fire up
Can't hear you,
the
though.
mini split there, or is
Yes.
that? Yeah.
Okay.
Got you.
No, it works really well.
All right.
All right. So item 7E, public hearing and first reading ordinance number 11, series of 2024, an ordinance of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving a minor subdivision, slope review, community housing review, and site plan review to divide 168 Original Road into 2 lots and for the construction of a new single-family residence, Basalt, Colorado. James.
Thank you. We have the applicant here this evening, Michael Fox. This is a public hearing and first reading of an ordinance on an application submitted by Michael Fox. And as the mayor indicated, it's requesting minor subdivision, slope review, community housing review, and site plan review. Once again, it's to subdivide the property at 168 Original Road and construct a new single-family residence and associated infrastructure on the vacant lot. The property subject to the application is 168 Original Road. We had a site visit with the council prior to today's meeting. It contains approximately 0.9 acres and contains an existing half a duplex, which is right here on the aerial. And the other half of the duplex is on the adjacent property to the west, or to the north, actually. The property contains 30% slopes and is zoned R2. The proposal is to subdivide the property into 2 lots of about 20,000 square feet each. The lower lot, being parcel B2, is proposed to contain the half duplex, and it's proposed to be maintained on that site. And then the new lot that is proposed is the upper lot. It's known as B3 in your packet, and it's proposed for a new single-family residence of about 3,999 square feet. Once again, it is lot B3 in your packet. The single-family residence is proposed to be accessed from the top of the property on Original Road, as you can see here. And the applicant is proposing that when the half duplex is redeveloped in the future, that it would come back as a single-family house meeting the R2 requirements. The applicant has proposed to pay cash in lieu of affordable housing mitigation, and we'll talk about that further. Review process for a minor subdivision typically requires only a review by the town council, but because it is combined with other land use reviews that require a P&Z recommendation, the Planning and Zoning Commission has made a recommendation to the town council on all of the actions being requested. The applicant was originally heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission in September of last year, and staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission had some concerns. So the applicant revised his application based on those concerns and came back to the P&Z in June for their recommendation. In reviewing the application, staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission provided a series of discussion items for evaluation, and staff evaluated those discussion items in the memos to the P&Z, most recently the June memo. Consistency with the master plan, the property is identified as existing residential land use on the future land use map. It's within the town's urban growth boundary, and it's in the single-family typology with a hillside overlay. The master plan includes goals about increasing density in appropriate locations, and the Planning and Zoning Commission felt that the subdivision request was generally acceptable if wildfire mitigation and vegetation removal were adequately mitigated. Additionally, consistency with the surrounding area. The applicants originally proposed a single-family residence of about 4,600 square feet on the new residence. While it is true that there are some single-family houses as you get higher up on Original Road that are around 5,000 square feet, the majority of the residences in the lower portion are between 2,000 and 4,000 square feet. And so staff originally recommended a reduction in the square footage. The Planning and Zoning Commission agreed, and so the applicant reduced their square footage in their revised application down to the 3,999 square feet. The applicant also erected the story poles on the site once they amended their application, and the P&Z and the council reviewed those story poles in the field. The applicant also provided photo simulations, and the Planning and Zoning Commission, based on the materials that were provided, didn't believe that the proposed residence would have a significant visual impact from Highway 82. Other topics that came about included the affordable housing mitigation, the creation of 3 or fewer new residential units that do not exceed 3,000 square feet would be exempt from affordable housing mitigation per our code. However, because the applicant is proposing for the new residence to be greater than 3,000 square feet, it would be required to be mitigated for. And so the applicant has proposed to provide cash in lieu for their affordable housing mitigation. That is discretionary on the part of the town council. And so there's a draft condition in the ordinance that's attached as Exhibit A in your packet that would require the payment of the cash in lieu at the time of permit issuance. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that the applicant actually be required to deed restrict the existing half duplex as an RO unit to mitigate. And the applicant has some concerns about that, and he can provide those as part of his comments. Staff has provided an alternative condition that council could consider related to making the unit an RO. So that's a decision option for the council to consider. In terms of the compliance with the R2 zone district, the applicant is proposing to meet the setbacks, the height, as well as he would satisfy the floor area of the underlying R2 zone district, as we have in the chart in the approvals. The half duplex on Lot B2, as I indicated, if it were redeveloped in the future, it would be required to meet the requirements of the R2 zone district, including the setbacks. Slope review, as I indicated, there are some slopes of 30% or greater. and staff has included some of our general slope review conditions that we have on almost every slope review. It includes mitigation for any trees that are removed. It also includes requirements for terracing, retaining walls that are required on the site, as well as painting the structure a dark earth tone color to help blend with the hillside, as well as using non-reflective materials. So these are general conditions that apply to basically all slope reviews in this area. As I noted, in terms of utilities, the applicant has proposed to bring the utilities up from the original lane area, which is down at the south end, and bring it up to the site. This was a requirement of the Mid-Valley Metro District. They indicated that they could not have their access from utilities from the top on Original Road because they were not reliable lines, and they didn't really know how good they would serve the property. So they've recommended bringing the water and sewer up from Original Lane. The applicant can speak to more about the disturbance that would be associated with that because they've done some work on that topic. But the conditions require that they revegetate any disturbance on the site from installing utilities. It also requires that they dedicate the necessary easements across the lower lots. And here's the alignment of the proposed utilities that we discussed in the field. Other topics that were considered, the new residents would need to have fire sprinklers installed in it, regardless of the square footage, and that's been carried over as a condition in the draft ordinance. And then there is a final kind of discussion item which relates to a plat note that was on the original plat. There was a plat note on the Dillon subdivision plat limiting the fathering parcel to the half duplex that exists on the site. The applicants have the other half duplex owners' consent to remove that plat note, and Town Attorney Conklin has provided an email that's in your packet indicating that council may remove that plat note with the consent of the other half duplex owner, as has been provided in the application. So this evening, staff would suggest hearing applicant comments, taking public comments, because it is a public hearing, and providing council discussion. Staff believes that the council has several decision options that are available to you. You could approve the ordinance on first reading and set a public hearing and second reading date for August 13th. If you felt that you needed more information on any topics or wanted the applicant to address concerns, you could also table the first reading and set a continuation date, or you could provide discussion as to any of the conditions that are in the application as well. So with that, I'd like to see if the applicant has some comments for council.
Michael?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Michael Fox. I am a co-applicant with my wife, Missy Fox, who is appearing via Zoom. She's at home with our baby. I just want to say that we submitted our pre-application back in 2021, and I worked with James for a long time, and our team, we've worked closely with an architect and a civil engineering firm in Denver, and geotechnical engineers and a number of different professionals. So even though it is only me tonight, there's kind of been a team looking at this, and we've painstakingly gone through this, and really all the details of this application have been looked at. As James said, and I'm not going to reiterate too much, I know this has been a long evening, we're proposing a 3,500 square foot roughly house with a 500 square foot garage. We've made sure to step down with the slopes to be sensitive to view lines, so the home enters in on the top level and steps down with the slope. We've tried to work really closely with all of the people we've met with, Mid-Valley Metro, definitely James, who I'm really grateful for, and his feedback. The P&Z Commission and taking their feedback into account in adjusting this project. And, you know, I have a number of neighbors here who are going to speak on this tonight. And I know there's still some mixed feelings within our neighborhood about our project, which I think you're going to hear from. I have really tried to make an effort to be as neighborly as possible through this process, and I've been in pretty close contact, especially with Rick and Sandy Spraker and Paige, who live at the driveway where we walked earlier, are my next door neighbors, and their attorney Bart Johnson, who's not here tonight. The only updates I've made to the application since we met with P&Z is the Sprakers have requested a easement be added on the lowest side of the original lane side for in perpetuity for water and sewage use, and they can speak to that, but I've included my intention to allow them to do that in the application. And yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm happy to answer any questions that the council has of me. And we're just really excited to be finally here.
Thanks, Michael. So for an order of operations, let's go ahead and do public comment, and then we can jump into questions and comments to you.
Sure.
So with that, I will open up the public hearing. So if anyone would like to speak about the application, please come forward. Don't forget, give your name, address, and make sure you sign in the back, please. And you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Sandy Spraker. I'm the adjoining property owner with Michael. And I am here mainly on my own behalf because I have been living at the home next door. We moved in 1978, so I've been there for a very long time. And at that point, there were only 5 houses on the whole property. I mean, on the whole mountainside before Aspen Junction sort of took over. But at this point, I still have a fair amount of privacy. All of the trees that are next to our lot, his house will be built from pretty much property line to property line, and every tree will be taken out. I feel like it's important for those trees to stay. I mean, it's going to be such an impact on myself, on the lady across the street who bought the house over there, and actually on all of our neighbors. It's a very large house, even though I know there are larger houses up on Hillcrest, not necessarily on Original Road, but I feel like, considering it's going to take up pretty much from lot line to lot line, every tree will have to come off of that lot where for all of these years the animals have had access to going up and down. I mean, you can go up there right now and see where their trails are. Excuse me. And a lot of that, I mean, there are no elk there anymore. There were when I first moved there, which is understandable. There are so many houses, but we still do have deer and coming and going all of the time, turkeys, that kind of thing, going through that property. So my concern is mainly for myself. I feel like it's going to take away a lot of privacy. I mean, it's just going to be a big impact for the whole neighborhood, and especially myself. Also, I would like to talk about the plat note that is on the original plat and the re-subdivided plat, which has been said was put there accidentally. I talked to Coral Dillon, who signed the original plat with her husband, John, who's now passed away. She wrote a letter and verified that that plat intent was meant to be on the plat that John Watkins signed. They signed it.
It's up to the 3 minutes. It's a 3 minute. You can finish your sentence, but you can't.
Oh, okay.
Continue. No, we have to do that.
They sold the property to John Watkins to build the duplex, and they wanted that plat note on his plat, which said the duplex could be there, nothing else on the property would ever be built, and that property would not be disturbed. So anyway, I just wanted you each to have a copy of the letter sheet sent and signed.
You want to hand me this stack?
And all of both plats are in there with the plat.
Yeah, I don't mean to cut you off, but if we're doing 3 minutes, we need to be
Okay,
consistent
great.
with everyone.
Okay,
We'll
thank
have
you.
multiple readings, and I encourage, you can come back, make more comments at other times.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome, thank you.
Could I see a
We
copy?
got to
I've never seen it.
do the rules consistently.
Over 30 seconds.
I know, you have to do the rules consistently.
Next.
My name is Paige Spraker. Bart Johnson couldn't be here tonight. I sent him an email on my comments. I used to own with Sandy the property immediately to the east. And what I'd like to do is simply read real quickly my email to Bart. Here are my comments on the proposal being considered by the town of Basalt to delete the one duplex only plat restriction needed in order to allow for additional development on 168 Road. I was joint owner of the property immediately to the east when John and Coral Dillon split their lot and sold it to John and Cindy Watkins. Stuart Watkins Construction built, replatted, and split the duplex into separate units. The plat restriction was recorded also on the plat. This was a private party restriction. It was not an Eagle County land use regulation required by Eagle County. This was done by John and Coral. There was a memo provided to the P&Z stating the one duplex only restriction was possibly, quote, unintentional oversight, and possibly should have been deleted when the duplex was split into two separate units. In addition to owning the property next door, I agreed to do the construction and permanent financing, and consequently had to sign the replat when the duplex was split into separate units. Splitting the duplex into two separate units was done solely for enabling separate ownership and permanent financing. It was not intended to provide a loophole for tearing down the landscaping adjoining the Dillon, Spraker, and other neighbors' properties to which everyone had discussed and agreed. The Dillons could have done what is now being requested and benefited financially. The plat restriction that still remains in place, excuse me, to prevent what is being proposed, which requires tearing down all the landscaping, basically lot line to lot line, on a steep slope. It was not an oversight. Also, you eliminate the one duplex restriction. It covers both of these lots, not just one, both sides of the duplex. Having been an appraiser and lender in my career, I understand applying different land use regs when annexation occurs. It makes perfect sense. That is not what is being proposed. The Dillons, Watkins, and Spraker families all agreed to a more restrictive land use than was allowed by Eagle County, and the plat restriction of one duplex only reflects their intent. What is being proposed is deleting a private party plat restriction to allow development that was not a previous government land use regulation, and only requiring the restricted duplex owners to approve and endorse the deletion, and not the individuals that in good faith agreed and recorded the restriction. This proposal should be denied unless all the parties that were involved in placing the restriction on the plat endorse the deletion or reach some acceptance.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for the comments. Who else wants to make comments tonight?
Hi, everybody. I'm Terry Newland. I live up the street from the Sprakers.
417 original. And first off, I would like to thank you guys for, your work here on council, because I know it takes a lot. And I also hope that you guys have read our, Tom and mine, my husband back there, which many of you probably know, from last September in 23, because a lot of the points that we bring up are still valid and very important to your deliberations discussing this, if it goes on. But personally, I'm behind Sandy, Rick, and Paige 100%. As far as honoring the original plat notations, it's great to hear when neighbors get together and they come to an agreement like that. And it was to help each other out, from what I understand. We didn't live there at that point. I moved in about 7 years later. And it's not like these guys did this by handshake. And they knew what they were doing. I mean, we had a banker, we had an appraiser, we had one of the biggest construction companies in Basalt at the time. They knew what they were doing. And so they took the time to formally make this notation on the plat and to have their intentions, which they believed would run with the land in perpetuity. And really, I'm just asking that you guys can look at this and hopefully respect what these people have said. They've written you notes and hoping that it would run with the land, as I think that it should. And then also, I didn't know this was today on the agenda because of public notice. I'm not within the official 300 feet public notice, but the signs that were put up, I don't even think this project has ever been legally public noticed. And I want to pass out these signs over. Here was the first one. Neighbors call me, they say, what's going on? Like, I'm the town crier. I don't know. But like, here was the first one in September, one of them. And just the last one, I didn't even know was there. I work at home. When I go out, I don't look on the side. I don't walk at that part of the road. I didn't know there was a meeting today until Sandy said, are you coming tonight? Now, you would think Tom and I might say, but it wasn't on our joint calendar. And this is wrong. And I do have to say that one of my neighbors said, hey, if this guy can't even post a sign, how is he going to build a house? I don't know. But that's just an added point. Also, the story pole issue, but I think Tom will relate to that. But I really would like you guys to reconsider about the plat note. I mean, it was different back then. I mean, just to get to Eagle County, there wasn't even the highway. I mean, it was a 2-lane road over to Eagle. The 4-lane highway expressway wasn't approved till 92. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who's next?
Hello, my name's Tom Newland. I live at 417 Original Road. And I hope you've all seen my letter in your packet because it really kind of explains where we're coming from here. But I'd like to touch on a couple of things before you deliberate. The first thing, as Terry mentioned, was the public noticing, which we feel was flawed. And also the physical representations on the site. The story poles were 6 feet shorter than they should be, was also flawed. It just kind of, I do this for a living, and I probably put up over 200 public notice signs and over 100 story pole projects, and I've never done anything like that. And if I did, the authorities that I was presenting to had told me to go away, and they'd come back later when I do it right. So I really feel the public process has been compromised by that. Now, I don't think Michael did this on purpose or maliciously or anything. It's just, we have these laws and regulations that need to be followed, and in my opinion, they haven't been followed for those two reasons. The other thing I want to talk about is the site plan in specific, and it just seems to me that it puts all of the impacts of the improvements and the developments on us who live on the upper part of the road and removes them from him and his neighbors down below. In other words, he won't see anybody going in and out of this house, neither will his neighbors down below. they won't be driving by the 24 pickup trucks that the subcontractors park along the side of the road while construction begins. They won't be listening to the noise. So, you know, I just wish that there was a better way to do this and bring the development down to original lane as opposed to original road. The civil says it's best on top, but they don't say it's impossible to come in from the bottom. Also, there's a large physical disturbance by the site plan. You've got the utilities that go straight up from the bottom of the development and the development on top. So it's a wide swath, and this is a juniper pinyon forest, as you saw in the site plan. Very hard to replicate, in fact, impossible in my mind. So I've got a concern about that large physical disturbance. Anyways, that's what I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm Rick Karsten, 304 Original Road, just east of Mr. Fox. Thanks for listening to us. Thanks, everybody, for coming. But I believe that this restricted parcel plat should not be subdivided. I think that's right, especially with the impacts it's going to, provide with the neighborhood and everybody there. And I agree with everybody what they said here. I'm not going to go through that again, but and one other thing I want to say is I'm a little bit disappointed with the P&Z for their outcome at the second meeting at the site and in this office here. I wish that there more would have come out here and listened to all our requests and all that stuff, our concerns. So that being said, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else in the room? If not, do we have anybody online? Doesn't look like it.
Yeah, Missy. Missy Fox has her hand up. Missy, if you unmute, you can speak to the council.
I mean, and Missy is one of the applicants, so, I mean, if she wants to make a.
Hi, I was
she
going
doesn't
to
have
ask,
to do it this part.
am I allowed to comment at this period?
Yeah, I can close the public hearing if you want to make a comment.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm not going to comment first.
Public hearing over?
I ended the public hearing, so Missy, if you want to go ahead and, speak as one of the applicants, go right ahead.
Okay, thanks. I'll be short. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. Like Michael said, I'm home with the baby. Just wanted to thank you guys for listening to us today. And just wanted to make a comment that we have worked really hard, spent many, many, many hours on this application, have done our best to do our due diligence in working with planning and zoning, working with, like Michael mentioned, the Mid-Valley Metro District, engineers, architects. We're really doing our best to be thoughtful about this and have done our best to work with all of the neighbors as well. So just again, want to thank you and reiterate, we put a ton of work into this and we really appreciate you hearing us today.
Thanks.
Can I just address some of the specific notes that were brought up, or do you want to ask questions?
Let's go ahead and give council a chance to start asking some questions and make some comments.
Sure.
First off, I know, James, you had a few discussion points up there. I wrote some of them down. Probably, I don't know if people wanted to go by category or if you wanted just to kind of fire away. Does council have a preference? Otherwise, maybe we could, affordable housing mitigation, start there. Questions or comments on that part? I can lead off if no one has one.
Well, I just, the cash in lieu of, I think it was 139,000, right?
Yes. Yes.
What would be the other thing? He would have to build an ADU?
There are a couple
What's
options.
the other, like?
Let me bring those up. Let me share my screen so we have them on Zoom.
While he's doing that.
So the options, the way the code lays them out, are to allow for a payment of cash in lieu, which is what is proposed. The Other options could be to require the existing half duplex to be deed restricted as a Category 2 unit, because residential mitigation is usually at a Category 2 level. Or you could ask the applicant to voluntarily agree to deed restrict the existing half duplex as an RO unit, which was the P&Z's recommendation. They did not want to go as far as requiring the Category 2, so it was kind of a compromise position where they asked for the existing half duplex to be an RO unit. So those are some of the options that could be available to the council.
And these are at council's discretion. The candidate, the applicant has offered the cash in lieu, but we could require any of these. My question on option 3, though, because I think I saw that in the notes, it's not allowed. And I went and took a look at the community housing guidelines, and the definition of community housing includes that there are income guidelines for community housing, and there are no, to my knowledge, income guidelines for RO.
That's
so
correct.
Would that in fact be, I don't think that would meet the requirement of affordable housing mitigation by definition.
You could require it to be deed restricted as a Category 2 unit, which is identified in the code as a possible mitigation. I'm just suggesting what P&Z recommended, which was they didn't want to go as far as requiring Category 2, so they thought a good compromise position was the RO scenario.
I like it, but I just worry, this is just my comment on that, my concern is that does not really meet the requirement technically. So I'm not super comfortable with the RO for that reason only. I like it in spirit. If that were to be compliant, found to be compliant, or maybe not compliant, I don't know what an attorney would say, but found to satisfy the requirement for affordable housing, that would be a different story, because I think that would be the best outcome, is to have the duplex be affordable housing, and we're making a dent. We're not carving down 2 free market places and one there, and then just kind of exacerbating our problems.
I think that makes sense to me.
Anybody else have an opinion on that?
Well, I think that it's not a question of if we want it, it's a question of when does it happen in this approval process? When does that question get answered? And I think that the $139,000 that goes into, I've never really appreciated fees in lieu of, because I could never really track where they went. And $139,000 doesn't get us a lot of housing.
No.
An RO with a restriction certainly helps, and then I still think there's further requirements that would take him out of the obligation entirely if he reduced the house size. So, but that's my comment on the housing mitigation.
Yeah.
So
for next meeting, can we get, is it possible to get more clarity on
your
that?
question is, I think the position really so far of council is, if there's a legal way to do the RO, the preference is to do the RO deed restriction. And
that's my preference.
the code requires category housing. It allows for, at the discretion of council, fee in lieu in the discretion of council. There's also an opportunity for applicants to propose, to voluntarily propose deed restricted housing such as RO. And so I'll, can take a look and opine on that for a second reading, but in a prior discussion with James, we thought there was kind of a pathway through the code to get there through this voluntarily proposing that it be deed restricted as RO.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, we
can follow up with that more in a second.
Appreciate that.
Am I able to just
go
quickly
ahead.
comment on that?
Yes,
so,
please.
Just first and foremost, I'm very sensitive to our community's affordable housing crisis that we're going through. my project's different than I think a lot of the projects that this council sees, including the two developments that you saw earlier, just in that this is an existing home with existing financing and equity in it versus something that's being built from the ground up. And so the concern about deed restriction in capping equity that's already been captured in the home and things like that is how it affects the financing and how that makes it cost prohibitive. I'm happy to work with this council. I think your concerns are totally reasonable, but that is the concern for me. I understand our kind of alternative option is to lose our garage and make that a carport and lose a bedroom, and we want to have this discussion if it's 999 square feet smaller, but that's just what we're having to think about on our side, just so the council's aware.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for. I got as much from the packet.
Yeah, and that's basically what my letter said. If I know it's a lot of reading material. You guys spend a tremendous amount of time.
I guess I'm having a hard time even going here without resolving the larger issue of the plat.
We can jump to the plat next. I think we got.
Yeah, I mean, because it seems like until we resolve the issue of the plat and how we feel about allowing that change, then we talk about how to mitigate affordable housing.
Is it possible for me to start on this too? Sorry to interrupt you.
I don't mind hearing,
Some color, yeah. If you,
your comments on that.
Just to be clear, on page 185 of the packet, I wrote a letter regarding specifically this, and we've talked, this is not the first time we've discussed this, we've talked about this kind of ad nauseum with P&Z as well. But basically, I bought the home in 2022, excuse me. I bought the home in 2020, 4 years ago. When it was advertised, it was presented as a splittable lot. The woman who owned it bought it in 1984. Her name was Nancy Bosshard. She had actually worked with the prior town planning commission to start the subdivision process in the mid-2000s. And then we discovered this plat restriction. The plat restriction, just so everyone is very clear, reads, the construction of only 1 two-family residence shall be permitted on the lot created by the subdivision. And that was included on the plat note in 1979 by the developer. That developer, 4 years later, then subdivided the property and sold off both lots. One, I believe, to Jim Wilson, who used to be the town planner, and the second to Nancy Bossard, who lived there for close to 40 years. None of the private agreements or any conversations about that plat restriction were recorded or noted. All we have are, the most recent document we have is the re-subdivision that includes the plat note that I just read to you verbatim from 1984. And so it leaves us in a position of, can this be removed? It was the question I asked, and I worked with the town and Jeff Conklin, who basically said that if the property owners are in agreement and then it's voted on by the town council, it can be removed. I've included a letter of intent from the other property owners at 166 Original Road to remove it. The other thing I would just comment on is I think that the town should consider the master plan and what the direction of the town is now versus what it was in 1979, which, I wasn't alive then. I'm in my mid-30s. And I just think that adding density, adding a single family home, potentially, paying into the community housing or doing RO is all in line with what this town needs going forward. We're not right on top of any of our next door neighbors. I think that that is kind of my thoughts on the plat restriction.
And I'll go ahead and address the plat restriction as well. So there's a restriction on the plat. It's essentially a private covenant. Covenants benefit some properties and burden other properties, unless they're written to benefit certain individual parties. In other words, they're kind of in gross rather than, they benefit, they're benefit people instead of property. This is drafted so that it burdens one property and benefits another property, and it's reciprocal. And this is kind of giving it the benefit of the doubt because it's just one phrase. And so just to back up a second, there's nothing on the plat that says that this plat restrictions run to the benefit of any specific party. It only is identified based on the property. So as a result, it's kind of a reciprocal covenant based on each of the properties that are on the plat, each side of the duplex lot. And so if there's a benefited property and a burdened property, it can be released by the parties who have the benefit of that restriction. In other words, if the two property owners that are subject to the covenant agree to release it, it could be released, in my opinion.
So it seems like the attorney and P&Z have determined that the plat can be removed, and it seems like our role here today is to figure out whether it should be removed.
Our role is that plat note does not run to the benefit of the town. It's not ours to release. It's a private covenant for the private parties to release. It hasn't been released, but there's an intent to release it.
So our role is to kind of adjudicate.
So the town council's role would be that in the event that they're approving the subdivision, it would be subject to that private restriction being released by the parties that are subject to it.
Right.
Well, in that case, shouldn't that be step one by the joint partners and they agree and then this comes back to us?
Well, what I've heard is that
apparently we're not.
Well, there's a letter in the packet.
Yeah, there's
or do you intend to release it?
I agree, that's page 187 of the package.
But you just mentioned that this is going to go forward, then it'll be negotiated or released, or is
So
it?
the plat couldn't be recorded until that restriction's released. And so there's an intent to release, so crafting an approval subject to that
Approval.
condition is within council's
And
ability.
is it dependent on approval of the project that goes on the other half? So in other words, if this project, say, doesn't get an approval, but they still get the plat note
Released?
Or is there a game here where we're going, well, let's see if we can get the project approved and then we'll release the plat note?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Michael.
What
and-
comes, it's the
yeah,
chicken
you'd have
egg,
to ask
you know?
Michael and
I think that if there's an agreement that they release the plat note, then it's a fair review process. But right now, we're caught between a rock and a hard place with the neighbors and the owners and this plat note that really is none of our business. Sounds like to me.
Again, I mean, I think the council has the ability to condition its approval on release of the private covenant, and there's an intent of the parties to do that. A subdivision plat wouldn't be recorded until that covenant is released. And so I don't think it is inappropriate for council to continue to review the application based on the ability to have that condition.
And that is a condition that's already in the exhibit. Is that correct?
Right? Is that in there, James? Right?
I believe it is, but I can check and
Let's just check that really quick.
Are we putting ourselves in a position to be in a discussion with a neighborhood and owners in a potential dispute over this? And why would we, I mean,
May I ask a question?
I don't know. Ask him.
We can't do
Yeah.
Q&A. Yeah,
Go ahead, I didn't know.
that's okay.
I think whether council acts or not on the release of the private covenant, I mean, I don't know what the neighbors would intend to do. Again, my read of the plat is it doesn't benefit, or they're not benefited by the private covenant. So I don't know what they would intend to do.
mean, there's a letter of intent from the owners on the other side of the duplex to, I don't know what the right verb is, but,
Release.
remove it,
Yeah.
release it. I think the question is, that just needs to be a condition in order for this to be, for them to be able to move forward with their,
Well, I guess I'm
just like
admittedly
any other.
confused because what I'm hearing from you, Jeff, is that in order to remove that restriction and change the plat, all that legally needs to happen is for Michael and Javier and Laura to agree to do so, right? Which we have the letter of intent from them.
Yeah.
But then why is it the actual action before us is an approval of that minor subdivision? So we do have to then approve.
Well, those are
We-
two separate.
two different things, yeah.
The one's a release of the private covenant, and then what you're looking at is the subdivision.
Of the lot.
The subdivision, it may not happen if you condition it on the release of this covenant that we don't, or
Right.
you.
But it sounds like the
don't
covenant, there's a letter of intent to release the covenant.
Yes.
So that to me is
Check
like,
that
okay,
box
let's
is
check that
checked.
box is checked. And so then our approving of then the subdivision of that lot, which the release of the covenant would allow, that's what's up for discussion.
I think you can set the release of the covenant aside.
Because we have the letter of intent, that's done. Yeah.
I think that's what we're hearing from Jeff.
There's not a condition currently in there, but you could add it. as
Okay,
part
let's
of
make
your
sure that
discussion.
we add that as a condition in for the ordinance. Vote.
Yeah, I mean,
I
what's
think
the
a
point?
greater question that comes of this is, if we're subdividing this lot, what other lots come before us now to subdivide? Like this is, I know the plat thing is kind of like a one-off thing. They wanted to keep it in perpetuity. At least that's what it says in the plat. But what does this expose, like, how many other lots in the town of Basalt could then bring this to us in this same way?
You probably have areas in the Hill District, we've seen one in the last few years up there to the extent they can meet the minimum lot size requirements. Perhaps in this neighborhood, Elk Run is one that you probably can't re-subdivide. In Willits, you probably can't re-subdivide those, those are a different beast.
Yeah, I would just say that, that's the primary role of zoning is to, have minimum lot sizes so that could or could not allow for subdivision of parcels. And so I don't know what parcels exist that are of a size and in a zone district where they could be subdivided that are then subject to a private covenant.
But I guess private covenant aside, right?
Yeah, just what's
So, like,
subdividable.
Do any other properties have plat notes like this that we deal with? Like, I've never seen this over the years. Is this something that normally occurs on a plat note? That people write notes of like, hey, I want to keep this like this?
It was
or-
probably the nature of the fact that they shared a wall.
Yeah.
It was kind of a unique
And the
development.
The neighborhood and the,
With the broader
But
question.
the thing was, it wasn't the neighborhood as much, it doesn't seem, because it was just between two parties.
The broader question you're getting at though is, do you want density in a place like that? And I think that's,
well, it's just we're creating.
Does our code allow that?
We start a slippery slope of oh man, we got plenty of space here. Let's just keep subdividing and putting houses on houses when, if my neighbor was trying to do this, I'd be in the same boat as these guys. This is not, they've lived there for long enough that they have their say. I'm speaking out loud,
So to your point, your question, so there's, on the subdivision, we have what's permitted under the zoning, and then you have the review criteria that, James has gone through, and there's conformance with the neighborhood, and James can go through those again. But that's kind of what you're getting at, I think, is, well, as to the subdivision, and the role as the town, what are the review criteria under which I look at a subdivision process, assuming it's legally possible from the zoning standpoint?
And Ryan.
Is it a PUD?
No, this isn't part of the PUD. The majority of town is in PUDs. So Aspen Junction is a PUD. You've got Willits, Sopers Meadows is a PUD. You've got Southside is a PUD. Elk Run is a PUD. So when you want to, adjust or subdivide in those developments, you have to go through a PUD amendment in order to do that. So that somewhat limits it. The Hill District is not, individual PUDs, so you have individual lots that are not covered by PUD. So there are potentially some lots up there that are large enough to subdivide, but there's not very many. The most recent one that we saw was the 563 Sopers Drive property that Julie Wyckoff had. That one was not in a PUD. It was large enough. It already had 3 houses on it, so she could subdivide it because it met the minimum lot size for that number of lots. But it's pretty limited.
Or like the property next to the park on Homestead. That would be like the last one, probably in the Hill District, that was subdivided into 3. Right. It was 1 lot divided into 3.
That was the Mabels subdivision.
Yep.
What, maybe nobody has the answer, but what's the benefit for the adjacent duplex owner for doing the release of the covenant? Is there monetary or future development opportunity, or what else comes from, why are they participating? Just being nice about it, or?
Are you asking me?
I guess, yeah.
I don't want to speak
what
for
the
Javier and
motivation
Laura,
is.
but I think theoretically they could build an ADU or, propose, it would have to, I think, go, I'm probably not the best person to ask this, but it'd probably go to P&Z, and I think they could build an ADU or some other non-attached, their unit, Jim Wilson and Laura Wilson, they did a 1,500 square foot expansion in, I think, 2000. But I think they could do a detached addition with approvals of the town. And I don't think they have any plans to do that, but I talked to them about this on Saturday. They know about this, and if the town wants a formal agreement before the second reading, I have full confidence I could get that.
That would clean up a few things, probably.
I'm kind of going back to this because it was mentioned about the staff identified the following discussion items. So starting at the top, consistency with the master plan, and of course, I think what we're talking about here is density over sprawl. And in my reading of the master plan and my view of it, yes, is it adding density to an already somewhat dense area? Sure, I guess you can look at it that way, but to me, that's not really the kind of density that we were defining in the master plan. I would consider this more in the vein of sprawl into what's already a rural-ish area. Consistency with character of the surrounding area. I tend to think that adding a 4,399 house is not consistent with the character. And then we get into the affordable housing mitigation, which, I think I would differ from almost everyone here, which in that, if I'm there, then I'm fine taking cash in lieu because we're getting actual units from real developers. I'm not looking to penalize a private homeowner more than they need to for, and I understand the financial restriction behind being able to place a deed restriction on the property you own, so. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of struggle with the first two before I can even get to the third.
Yeah, I have to echo, especially the part about the character of the neighborhood. It feels, coast to coast there to me. It feels kind of everywhere that you can find a spot to put a house and a big one on top of it all. So I struggle with that. Honestly, I'm struggling with the poles not being the right height because that's not an accurate portrayal of what the sight line will be. I'm 6 feet plus a little bit, so I'm trying to imagine myself at the top of those, and it doesn't help me visualize how it fits with the character of the neighborhood, if that makes sense. So I would certainly try to figure out how to make that accurate. But it's just, it's, I mean, I understand that there's lots of houses everywhere on the corner, and at the beginning there wasn't lots of houses, and what's wrong with putting another one? And I don't think anything's wrong with putting another one, but I feel like this one just doesn't quite, it doesn't quite fit. That's kind of my gut on the initial look at it. I think the plat that is the horse that should probably go first, and I think, I think there probably needs to be, it seems to me, from your neighbor's comments, there needs to be more discussion about like what screening is going to be and how that is going to be without just kind of clearing the space and doing it, which I think you kind of have a little bit in here, but it's not significant. So it doesn't really seem like it adds up to much. I guess at the beginning, I just have quite a bit of pause on really this concept, I should say.
So I do want to just stop real quick and say we're about 40 minutes over schedule at this point. We still have one more agenda item. I want to give everybody a chance to speak up here who hasn't had a chance to speak, but I'm going to recommend we continue first reading until the next meeting because we got a lot. There's a lot to unpack here and continue to talk about it. I want to make sure we have a substantive discussion about it and look at all this. That's what I would recommend doing. But have you had a chance to speak yet? I can't remember. It's a blur.
Most things that I would have asked have been asked already. I think to me, figuring out the plot or making sure we've got that dialed. I know you've looked into it. Once we feel comfortable with that, I'm very interested in the affordable housing conversation. One thing that stands out to me is this is 0.2 miles from a bus stop. And every urban planning book will tell you, like, if you're gonna increase density, you do it on a transit line. So this particular plot feels somewhat different than if it was even like 0.3 more miles up the hill. I would feel differently because that feels walkable to me. But I also hear what Dieter is saying on this.
My issue with it is just the site constraints and the constructability of it. The utility easement, the one that's in the packet shows a 16-foot deep sewer line coming down that hill, and I just don't understand how that can be restored adequately or even constructed. I hope I got something else in mind.
I just didn't catch that.
The sewer water easement is disturbing to me, and the other point is that Mid-Valley doesn't think that the lines in original are sufficient to handle this house, so they're asking you to go down to original lane with the utility extension that's pretty significant on that hillside, which further disturbs all the natural environment. And I mean, we're talking, if you're going 16 feet deep in one location, there's a swath that's going to be 40 feet wide. And remediation on that kind of thing is difficult, and especially in those soils. So I think I agree with David to continue, because there's a lot to look at from just the site impacts.
Angela, I don't think you've spoken yet. I see you're off mute, so you're up.
Yeah, I think Rick just spoke to what I was going to say. It doesn't feel good to me to subdivide a parcel and rip out natural vegetation and disturb, any existing wildlife for just a giant house. Isn't feel in keeping with the spirit of the town. I think we're here, we appreciate wildlife, we live in Colorado. To Rick's point, I mean, that could be disturbing, quite a bit of wildlife vegetation. It doesn't feel great to me.
Thanks, Angela. So if we could, unless you have something else to say, I would say.
I just want to know for next reading, I'll work on the plat restriction, agreement. is there anything else that I can do to help you? And if I could just comment on the utilities, just as a point of clarity, at least my understanding is that there is a 10-foot, and there's a letter from an engineer on page 205. There's a 10-foot horizontal separation that does not need to be dug between the two lines, but it's a 6-foot deep hole. And I was explained that this could be done with a 2-foot trench to minimize impact, but I can get clarity on that as well.
Yeah, you should.
And that was, I think, from a conversation with Bill Reynolds at Mid-Valley Metro and our engineers.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, I think we're going to want to talk about that. We're talk about some of what Angel brought up. Talk about slope review soil. That I know that's going to come up. The easement, there's a lot. So I think it's fine that we're continuing something this complicated. So don't think, it's not like it's not on you. It's just going to take a while to get through all this.
I'm just trying to help with your analysis.
So 1 second, the slope review, right, that was done, you're borrowing somebody else's slope review to get to this point, but you actually haven't done it on the slope at this time, is that accurate?
Yeah, so what was required of us to submit our application was to do a secondary resource geotechnical analysis soil report, if I'm saying that correctly. We hired Kumar and Associates, so Scott Broughton, who's our next door neighbor, who's been at all of our meetings, and is not here tonight, but maybe at the next one. He subdivided in 2017 our 2 other next door neighbors, and they pulled the soil reports from those. Kumar Associates did both lots of that. And so we hired them to do ours so that they would have the most accurate they could have, because it's basically the same hillside.
Okay, so is that done yet?
But you haven't done dug a test pit.
No, to do that, I was told we basically have to get an excavation permit, and so we haven't taken that step. This is just for subdivision. When we do a building plan and get that approved, which has to go back before P&Z, that would have to have I believe, a true soil plan. Yeah.
So there's a lot to unpack.
You need a motion to continue?
Yeah, I would entertain a motion that town council continue the public hearing until August 13th, 2024.
Yeah, the first reading and public hearing
Continue the first reading and public hearing until August 13th, 2024, if somebody wants to.
Mayor, I move that the town council continue ordinance number 11, series of 2024 for first reading on August 13th, 2024.
Second.
And set the public hearing and
First reading. Continue the
Public hearing. First reading and public hearing.
all of that.
So moved.
I think I got it. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
I know exactly.
So let's, Pam, would you please call the roll?
Yes, of course. All right, let's begin with Hannah Berman,
Yes.
Angela Anderson,
Yes.
Rick Stevens,
Yes.
Angel Dupre-Bouchard,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
and Dieter Schindler.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael, and thank all of you you've been with us all afternoon since 5, pretty much, so
Thank you.
They've pulled a shift.
appreciate it, all the
In the
comments.
state of Colorado, that area is the second worst geological soil conditions in the state.
We're not gonna have the shelf, we can't have that online.
I'm going around the bathroom.
So, we're gonna need a motion.
Yep.
Mayor, I move that the town council enter executive session for a conference with our attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions in accordance with CRS 24-6-402 4B. More specifically, to discuss pending litigation related to GBM LLC v. the town of Basalt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we're in executive session.